Hello, I am Nick. I am the son of Morganna Roberts, Morganna Cottrell, whatever name you like to refer to her as, the Kissing Bandit, Nancy Lee Rose, whatever you like. This is the second of two major videos that I am making and putting out for you for your information. I encourage you to watch the first video. I think you'll find it very interesting. We'll entitle it Morganna Roberts' Son Busts Myths About Morganna. So not only will there be more of an introduction of me, because chances are you didn't know that she had a child. She does, me. And also bust some of the many myths and misinformation and disinformation, etc. about Morganna. I think you'll find it quite interesting and educational and enlightening. This video is about what it is like to be the child of Morganna and why you can be happy that you are not, and about my childhood, okay, what it was like being the child of Morganna as a child. As an adult, anything that I've put up with and tolerated, etc., that's my choice. I'm an adult. The childhood was not my choice, and I had no control over that. And my childhood was a series of basically unregulated foster care, and with a lot of trauma. Somehow or another, I managed throughout my life to overcome all of that. Given my childhood, I should probably be a misogynist, a sociopath, a psychopath, a drug addict, in prison, or dead. But I am none of those. I've never had any inclination toward those. It's rather miraculous and definitely against all odds. I have wonderful relationships. I'm a very compassionate person. I have relationships for many, many years. Women love me. They're great friends. I've never had any trouble with the police or the law. And I'm a caring person. I donate blood regularly. I have 3 cats or stray kittens that I found on the street. And I'm a very rational, well-balanced person. I've been married 1 time, 17 years so far. There's one interview from years ago from Chicago entitled Morganna Tells of an Unhappy Childhood. Okay, well, I'm going to tell of an unhappy childhood that my mother certainly had the power to make not so bad, but it was quite peculiar and unique, I should say. Before I go any further, let me just suggest that you can either check the link that I will put on here to a little Google Sites page that I created back in 2018, and I talk about that a little bit more in the other video, and or you can just go to Google and put in Morganna's Son, M-O-R-G-A-N-N-A apostrophe S, S-O-N, Morganna's Son, and the first Google Sites page that pops up should be mine. And it tells a little bit about me. It's from the time I was born, with some photographs over the years. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a bit. But those are 2 ways that you can kind of catch up a little bit, because as I explained in the other video, most people don't even know that I exist, but I certainly do exist. Been in there all these years. I'm 61 years old now, so I've been existing and being faithful and silent, helping my mother in that way, to no good result, pearls before swine. And I want to let you understand that all of this information that I'm putting out in these 2 videos doing for free. I've had many opportunities over the years to speak up and be interviewed or write books or whatever to make money. A lot of people apparently have made some money by just being pseudo-journalists and reporting lies and copying and pasting misinformation and disinformation and things and making money. I've had many of opportunities to do that, but I've always been silent and loyal. I am giving away all of this information for free. I'm pretty sure I won't even be monetized by YouTube. So I am giving all of this away. So please enjoy this information, and I hope you will find it interesting. If you have seen the first video and or seen the little Google Sites page that I made, this video will make a lot more sense. So if you haven't seen those, please be sure and see those, and you'll say, oh, okay, all fits together. So on the Google Sites page, you'll see a picture of me when I was a little baby, about 1.5 years old, with my mother and Howard Roberts, and another person there, but we'll save that for another time. And then I lived with Howard and his parents. My mother went on the road to try to make a name for herself and things. I guess when I was about 2 years old. I have some flashes of when I lived with my mother and Howard. When I was a little baby, just some flashes. But I lived with Howard and his parents from the time I was about 2 until I was 4. And then my mother took me from there and put me to live with her mother, Jane Rose, and her grandmother, Virginia Blackerby, in Louisville, Kentucky. And it wasn't terrible, I don't know, my mother apparently found it so bad that she ran away when she was a young girl. And she took me from where I was perfectly happy and loved and well taken care of and put me there. Don't exactly understand the reasoning there. I don't know. Maybe an interviewer can ask her that sometime. So I lived there until I was about seven years old. And then my mother took me from there and sent me to live with friends of hers, a bartender from one of the clubs that my mother worked at, and her husband and their 2 boys. They had one boy's like 12 and one 14, I think. They were the Brooms in Charlotte, North Carolina, and they had been friends of my mother's for some time. And she had bought them mini bikes and things like that, and a boat and some other things like that. And that was okay. I lived there for about 1 year. While I was there in the 4th grade, and all the students had to take an aptitude test. I believe it was called the Iowa Test of Basic Skills. And my scores were all so high, they found it a little bit unbelievable at the school, so I had to take another test called the California Achievement Test, I believe it was called. And my scores were so astronomically high, everything on both of those tests were in the college level. So it was decided that I should not go to the 5th grade, that I should skip directly to the 6th grade. Unfortunately, before the school year started, my mother pulled me out of that home and sent me to live with friends of hers who were the parents of her first driver, chauffeur, bodyguard person, Barbara. And that was in Norfolk, Virginia, Chesapeake. And they were a lovely old couple, an sort of elderly black couple, and they were very nice, and they treated me very well. I started now to see a pattern that was going to be happening much more frequently. That is being the new kid and being bullied and not having anyone like me in the beginning. But then, as I started to make friends and start to form relationships and things like that, suddenly whisked away and put somewhere else. There were times where I would wake up in the house that I had been living in for several months or a year or so like that, and go to bed in a completely different home with a completely different family in a completely different city and state. And that happened a few times. And in this particular case, I was in the school play, the Christmas play, A Christmas Carol, and I was playing Scrooge, and it was kind of a big deal. And my mother had a custom-made tailed tuxedo made for me by one of her costume makers, and I had a top hat and a ventriloquist dummy. You will see in the pictures if you look at my Google sites there, and because I did magic and ventriloquism as a child for fun. And Howard Roberts' mother came down from Baltimore to Louisville, and it was so exciting, and I got such a nice ovation and everything like that. And finally, people were accepting me, and I was really excited. My mother had come in for the play. Well, guess what? She took me immediately from the school, and we went to the airport, and she said, "I have a surprise." Well, I knew what that meant. On the night before Christmas Eve, I was on an airplane with no notice, with a fully tailed tuxedo and a top hat and a ventriloquist dummy and a suitcase my mother had packed for me, and landed in Atlanta, Georgia in the middle of the night on Christmas Eve to a completely different situation. As it turned out, that was the home of the mother and grandmother of one of my mother's dancer friends, and they ran a foster home, a group home for familyless children, and there was about, I think, six or seven children there, and then the mother of my mother's co-worker and her mother, and they were all black. Everyone was black there. And so I show up to this foster group home with a tuxedo, tail tuxedo, with all the trimmings, cummerbund and ruffled shirt and cufflinks and top hat and everything like that, having no idea what was going on. So I didn't even get to enjoy the little bit of recognition that I would have gotten. Oh, I was really popular when the play ended. People came around and it was very exciting. I didn't even get to enjoy any of that because I was a long way away from that. And so a couple of days later, I called the people that I had been living with in Virginia to apologize, and I didn't even get to say goodbye, which was going to be a theme that came up again and again. So they told me that they were really shocked. They didn't know what was going on, and that people had been calling the house wondering where I was at. A theme that went on and on. So then Christmas holiday ends and I start school. I am the only person in the entire school who is not black. All of the students, all of the teachers, all of the faculty were black, and me. Okay, that was a little bit of a surprise for me, and of course I was really bullied then and not well accepted in the beginning, that's for sure. That was quite challenging. Before I continue, there's one thing that I should explain so that things make a little bit more sense. I was living in Atlanta at this time. I just arrived in Atlanta, Georgia. My mother spent most of the time on the road, of course, 40 some odd weeks a year probably. She always had a home base. When I was living in North Carolina with the Brooms, she had a townhome apartment. It was kind of her home base. When I was living in Atlanta at that time, she was leasing hotel rooms in the Peachtree Hotel, I think it was called, across the alley from the Nightery Club in Atlanta, and she leased by the year the hotel room, one for her and one for her chauffeur, bodyguard, driver. Now, when I lived in North Carolina, my mother had switched from her first chauffeur bodyguard person, Barbara number one, the main one, who was really cool. She was like a female Lincoln Hayes from the Mod Squad. She was really cool. I liked her a lot. And then she had another woman who did that for her named Carol, who she met from the apartment complex that that my mother had the townhome in, and she was very nice too. She was very cool. And then my mother moved her place of living, her home base, to that hotel in Atlanta sometime around the same time that she moved me to Atlanta. And, she would spend a few weeks there a year, I guess, and then be on the road the rest of the time. During that time, she had a new Barbara that didn't last very long. That Barbara made a death threat to me, and I told my mother, and my mother fired her right away, and then had a new chauffeur, bodyguard, driver guy, who was a guy named Yahya, who was Arab from Israel, and he was with her for a few months. He and I got along very well. He was very cool. And then, during that time, that is when my mother met and married Bibi, Byron Barry Bowles. Okay, so I want to give you kind of a little bit of an idea of the correlation from what I had said in the earlier video, the first video, about these different people and the different places and things like that, because now we're going to actually get to Bibi here in just a moment. So I'm living at the group foster home, and I am the only white person in the entire school. It was very soon thereafter that my mother had met Bibi, Byron Barry Bowles, the former president of the North Carolina chapter of the Outlaws Motorcycle Club, who, as I said, built beautiful custom Harley-Davidson choppers at that time. And I want to say it was 1975. I think that's about when it was. I can't remember exactly the dates. But enter Bibi into the mix. So one day he comes up to the house on his chopper, and this was before they were married. I want to say it was before they were married. I was actually at the wedding, as I said before, but we'll talk about that in a moment. But he pulls up on his big chopper, big Harley-Davidson with the king-queen seat and the sissy bar and all of that. And he was a big, handsome lion man. He looked like an anthropomorphic lion, and not a person that you would even think of wanting to fight. Okay, he was quite a formidable looking chap, yeah, handsome lion man. And he comes to the house and he tells me, he goes, "Hey, we're going for a ride." So I'm like, okay. So I get on the back of the chopper, and he had taken me for rides on his choppers before, riding up and down the highway and all that sort of stuff all over. So what he did was he just took me up and down the streets in the neighborhood, boom, 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 big loud Harley-Davidson chopper going pretty slowly, loudly and slowly. And we went up and down the street and that street and this street and that street. And he just looked at each house as we went by. And we just drove around the neighborhood for a while. And then he took me and dropped me off at the house. And then he went back to Mom there and went his way and all of that. And I know what he was doing. He never said it, but I know what he was doing. He was showing the people in the neighborhood, you mess with this guy, you're messing with me. It was very cool. It was you really knew what was going on, and so that was pretty cool. Sometime soon after that, I was riding my bicycle up the street, and a group of about 4 or 5 kids, I don't think I'd seen them before, stopped me on the road, and they threatened to beat me up and steal my bicycle. I pretended like I was getting off my bike. I hopped back on, and I rode for my life. They were chasing me, but they couldn't catch me because they just wanted my bike. I didn't want to get beaten up. I called my mother, and I said, I have to get out of here. I told her what happened, and it was really, really unpleasant. And that was the only time, the one and only time I ever had any say in whether I went somewhere or where I went or any of that. But she got me out of there in, I want to say 2 days. and then put me with another couple. See, I always lived with what was called guardians. I always had guardians, okay? And put me with another couple. This woman had also been a bartender at one of the clubs that my mother had worked at in Atlanta this time. And her husband was a machinist, and a really, really wonderful couple, Thelma and Ed Stewart. And they were just really awesome. They took really great care of me. Most of the people took really good care of me that I lived with. The Brooms in Charlotte, North Carolina. When I was living there at with Barbara's parents in Virginia, they were really awesome. The group home thing, the orphan group home thing in Atlanta that I just left was not very pleasant, and I was not treated particularly well. But the Stewarts treated me beautifully, and I had problems with my tonsils really, really bad. I had to go to the hospital a couple of times and had really bad chicken pox and everything, and they just really took wonderful care of me, as all the other people did. You know, these are the people that, you know, they fed me breakfast and lunch and dinner and got me to school and, you know, helped, with my interests and things that I wanted and needed. They were there when I was sick and all this sort of thing. And, you know, they had dogs. Just about everyone that I lived with had dogs. And the dogs, of course, were my little buddies when I didn't have any friends, when I was brand new and being bullied and all of that sort of thing. So these are the people that took care of me that I was constantly ripped away from without notice, time and time again. I'll get back into that in a moment. But this couple was really, really wonderful, and they also lived in Atlanta. During the time I lived with them, they, after a few months, they actually bought a house in a little town called McDonough, Georgia. McDonough, a little farm town, just exactly like Mayberry on the Andy Griffith Show. 2 police officers, farms, like one big church. Everybody was like a big family. It was really a wonderful place. It was paradise at that time. They had bought a beautiful little 5-acre farm, and we had 8 cows and had a horse and 35 chickens and 3 pigs and a peacock and a peahen and some other critters and a nice little cornfield and a nice vegetable garden. We raised the animals as farm pets. The only thing that we took from the animals at all was eggs from the chickens. They were called Araucana chickens. They lay colored eggs, believe it or not. So it was a wonderful, wonderful life there. I was very involved in the church, as was everybody in the community there. I'd always been, every place I went, I always found a church. And I would always be like this lone kid showing up at the church and very involved and singing in the choir and everything like that. Probably people didn't really know what to think of me very much. But that was a little bit of community for me. And they were just really, really wonderful. And during the time that I was living with them and going to school in McDonough, Georgia, the school actually started a gifted and talented program for me and 3 other students. There was a girl, and then there was a brother and sister who had moved to McDonough, Georgia, of all places, from Belgium. And we were all super achievers. They started a gifted and talented program just for us, and we were actually featured on the front page of, I think it was called the Henry County Times. That was the newspaper for way out there in the country. But they actually had a photograph of us, and I know my mother had a copy of that. I doubt she has it anymore, but she did have one. And it had a big picture of the 4 of us featured on the front and about how scholastically talented we were, and that they started a gifted and talented program at the school there for us. And that was a lot of fun. And during the time that I was living in Atlanta with the Stewarts, I think before they bought the home in McDonough, Georgia, around 1975, that is when Mom and BB picked me up, and I was living with the Stewarts at that time, and we went on a trip to Florida, and along the way stopped, I believe it was in Sarasota, Florida, and my mother and BB got married. And like I said, I believe it was 1975, give or take a few months or so. And I was the best man to BB, and I gave away the bride, my mother, there in the courthouse. BB was an excellent stepfather to me, very engaged and very involved. And of course, he was on the road with Mom. They traveled a lot. But they had bought a nice big house in College Park, Georgia, in a very affluent area there, very pretty. And I had a room in that house for when my mom would be in town, because like I said, she always had home bases for when she wasn't on the road. So if she was in town, maybe on the weekends, I would stay there with them. Or if it was during like summer vacation or Christmas vacation, and they happened to be in town, I would stay there. So I had a nice room there, and I liked BB a lot. So Mom meets Bill while her and BB were married, and at some point, my mother was getting divorced from BB. I don't know exactly the time and details on that, but Bill started traveling as Mom's driver, I suppose. And this was about 1976. Well, 1976, maybe 77, but I think it was 76. And while they were on the road, BB came to the house and cleared everything out, all the furniture, all the clothes, everything in the entire house, except for some coat hangers and bits of newspaper here and there, but totally emptied out the house, except my room. He didn't touch a thing in my room. And I had valuable stuff in there. I had some nice little collection of various different things and some stuff of some value, but he left it completely intact. And I thought that that was very kind. And that was kind of a message to me that, no hard feelings with us. So I thought that that was very nice. So now Bill is the man in my mother's life. And like I said, you never hear about BB anymore, but it was certainly well known on the newspaper articles and the interviews and everything Mom did. BB was certainly very prominently spoken of. As I used to be when I was a very small child. I would be mentioned in newspaper articles. I liked BB a lot. And I liked Bill okay. I accepted him. One bizarre side effect of my childhood being finding myself waking up in a home where I had lived for several months or a year or so with a family that was taking care of me and feeding me and, engaging me in my life and finally making friends at school and things like that. And, the connections that I had with the pets who were my buddies. You know how it is with pets. Whether you're a child or an adult, you have a very strong bond with your pets. But one of the weird side effects is I don't miss people. I was constantly ripped away from everyone and everything in my life over and over with no notice. So it's kind of like everyone that you know, your family, your friends, your pets, all are suddenly dead. That's exactly what it was like over and over. It's like everyone you know is gone over and over. So that's why I think it's kind of miraculous that I'm not a sociopath. I do care about people a lot, and I have great relationships, many years and stuff like that. And I'm a compassionate, empathetic, sympathetic person and all of that. But the one weird thing is I don't miss people. I've been in Asia for 16 years now, and I really don't miss people back home. Howard and I miss him. We talk every Thursday. Actually, I call him every Thursday. And we'll talk more about how helpful he has been in my life in a bit. But it is kind of strange. So I didn't miss BB, and I accepted Bill. And Bill he was okay to me. And when they were first going out, I mean, he was fine. And even when we first lived together, which I'm going to get into in just a bit, during that period of time, he was fine. It was when Mom came out of retirement again, and they went on the road together again, after us all living together for a year, that he just basically completely dropped the ball. But in the early time, everything was okay with that as far as I was concerned. I want to take a moment here and back up to emphasize how difficult and challenging the type of life that I had growing up as a child was, in the aspect of constantly being moved from one place to another. I know that there are many children that move frequently as they're growing up, usually because a parent has to move with their job to relocate. They usually have the family unit going as one solid unit. And I know that some children are troubled and have issues and things like that, and they may have to be shuffled around for one reason or another, but neither of those were my case. There was really no good reason that I know of that has ever been explained to me by my mother why I was constantly moved around with no notice. And having spoke sometime to some of these people later on, they had no idea. They didn't know what was going on. These people thought that my mother was their friend, and they were my mother's friend, and out of the blue, everything was completely disrupted. With no thought, no empathy, no sympathy, no compassion from my mother toward me or those people, or my pets, my dogs, my friends when I would move in a new place. And like I said, it was constantly like everyone and everything that I knew was just gone, just died. I actually had to have all of the childhood shots 3 times, except for the one that leaves a scar, because being suddenly moved to another school and not having my shot records, they wouldn't accept me. So I actually had all of the childhood shots, vaccinations, except for the one that leaves a scar, 3 times. And my mother took me from Howard and his family when I was 4, and I could have easily stayed there and been well nurtured. They loved me very much. And Howard has his own grown children who are very successful and very well taken care of. I could have stayed with Mom's mother, Jane Rose, and her grandmother. That wasn't so bad. They were a little bit older, but that was okay. There was no reason to stay with the Brooms. I could have definitely stayed in Virginia with Barbara, first Barbara's parents, the Hams. They were older, but I could have stayed there for a few years. It's very good. I could not have stayed in that foster group home that I was in. There was no reason for that. I could have definitely stayed with the Stewarts in McDonough, Georgia. That was actually a perfect situation. And imagine what it was like for the people that I left. These are people who raised me, fed me, gave me loving care, were there when I was sick, conversed with me, etc. And I was a good child. Nobody wanted to get rid of me, I'm certain. Of course, my mother paid the people that I stayed with, and you could tell the difference with the Brooms in North Carolina. It was more of a paycheck, but they took good care of me. I had no complaints. They were a little cold, but they didn't really care. They knew that I was leaving. They had 2 children of their own. The foster group home thing that I arrived in on Christmas Eve, well, that was definitely just some financial, well, no, I think actually there was another reason that had nothing to do with me, I'm pretty sure. Maybe I'll get into that. We shall see. But it had nothing to do with me, nor the people that I'd been living with in Virginia. Imagine how it was for those people that cared about me. Howard and his parents, I know for a fact they were devastated. They did know that my mother was taking me away. They protested, but they had no recourse. Her mother Jane Rose and grandmother, I think they were probably indifferent to it, basically. It didn't really matter so much to them. The Hams in Virginia, I'm sure they were devastated, preparing for Christmas. I was like 11 years old. I'm sure they bought gifts for me and, thought about what I would like and had planned Christmas. And Christmas Eve, I'm no longer there. I'm not there for Christmas. And then in Georgia, the Stewarts, I know they loved me very much and cared very much for me. And I spoke to, of course, Howard and his parents. I spoke to them a lot in later years. I spoke to the Hams in Virginia, like I said, I had called there, and they were devastated. They were really upset. And I spoke with the Stewarts in Georgia years later, and they were as well. They had no notice. And imagine having to go through my room and my belongings and go through everything that I had touched and interacted with and have to collect it all and get rid of it. It's like having a child that died. What type of person? Is there a word for a person who is seemingly so devoid of sympathy and compassion to do this sort of thing over and over to everyone? I don't know. I was 11 years old when I landed in Atlanta, Georgia, and showed up in the middle of the night to the foster care home. Howard's mother, Margaret, had come, as you will see in the picture, if you check my Google Sites page, she had come there to celebrate Christmas with me, had come from Baltimore to Norfolk, Virginia, and brought presents. And like I said, I'm sure the Hams brought presents and had things set up for a nice celebration. My Christmas was spent suddenly in this group home, and no Christmas that was my gift. That was my gift for Christmas then. That's what my mother thought would be a lovely Christmas gift for her child, to take me out of a loving home where everything was wonderful the night before Christmas Eve and put me in a group home for children and make sure that I was the only white person in the scenario. There actually was one other white person there for a little while. There actually was. When I got there was one white person, a little girl, who was 4 years older than me, actually. And maybe I will talk about her at another time. But she was not there very long. Getting back on track, my mother and Bill were now married and been traveling around. His mother was on the road, picked me up in McDonough, Georgia for summer vacation, and told me, as she had told me, that we were going to the Bahamas, to Freeport on the Grand Bahama Island for summer vacation. So that was pretty exciting. The Stewarts and I had discussed the very possibility that I might not be coming back, because we knew of the track record that had been set as a precedent, but there was no indication. My mother had not indicated to them that I would not be coming back, so we were pretty confident and hopeful that I would be coming back. I wouldn't be. So we're on the airplane, and my mother and Bill are all excited, and my mother tells me that she is retired and showed me photographs of her and Bill cutting up her very expensive, lovely costumes and things like that, and that we were going to live in the Bahamas and be a family. Well, we were in the Bahamas for about 10 days. Oh, yes, and that I would not be going back to McDonough, Georgia, which was paradise for me. That was the happiest I'd ever been in my life until adulthood. So we were in Freeport for about 10 days. Turned out very anticlimactic. So then we flew back to Key West, Florida, and my mother bought a new car, a station wagon. And we drove up Florida and across the southern states and up the western states, and then headed back toward the east through the northern states. And I was told that we were just driving till we found the perfect place to settle down. That sounds pretty good. There's a lot of great places in America. I mean, I love Texas. Texas is a great place. Louisiana might be kind of nice. I'm sure Montana's pretty cool, and some other places. As it turns out, somewhere along the line, they had decided, without telling me, that they decided that Columbus, Ohio, of all places in the United States, was the ideal place to settle down. And it just happened to be where Bill was born and raised, so his old stomping ground. So of all the places in the United States of America that I was told we were looking for the greatest place, most wonderful place, it was determined somewhere along the line that it was going to be Columbus, Ohio. So we moved into an apartment complex in a sort of upper middle class neighborhood and on the suburbs of Columbus, Ohio. And I was going to be starting junior high school in the 8th grade. I got my first job as a newspaper delivery boy for our apartment complex, which was pretty large. I'm not going to say a lot of the details of the year that I spent living with my mother and Bill, just because I don't think that that's fair or cool to tell a lot of personal stuff about other people that you're living with. I just think that would not be too cool. But I will tell you this. I believe Bill was going back to school at OSU. I don't know if he was working. I know he had been working with the post office before. I'm not sure if he was working at that time, but I believe he was going to school again. And I want to say that I believe that my mother's heart was in the right place. She wanted to try to be a regular housewife and mother, I think. And I want to say that I think that she really tried to do a good job. It was a failed experiment, I must say. It did not work out well. That's why it only lasted about a year before my mother went back on the road and became Morganna again. It was kind of like a long vacation for her. An absolute disruption for my life, though. My next few years started going downhill pretty quickly there. My grades in my first report card in the 8th grade were all A's, straight A's, which is expected. Oddly, the next report card period, my grades had plummeted. My grades plummeted. And I was feeling, I didn't realize it at the time, what or why, but I was really depressed. I had become very, very depressed. I was having thoughts of ending myself that persisted for a few months, and I didn't really know why. I didn't understand it. After all I'd already been through, I never really felt depression before, sadness and confusion and things like that from the way that my life had been up until then, but I didn't really understand depression. It was a very strange experience. A couple of things that had to do with that, I'm sure, are it was pretty stressful, I think, for my mother, particularly. And even though we were living in a sort of upper middle class neighborhood, and the junior high school I went to was sort of a more affluent studenthood, you could say, because they were all from those neighborhoods. Those kind of higher, upper middle class people. We didn't have much money. Apparently, I don't know what happened, but things were rather Spartan. And I had to get meal tickets for lunch. So I'd have to go in the morning and get what looked like a little movie ticket so that I could get free lunches. And of course, that led to a lot of teasing and bullying from the other students. And other indicators that we were not exactly well off financially. Long gone the days of my mother with new Lincoln Continentals every year and chauffeur-driven cars and full-length mink coats and diamond and ruby rings and all that sort of thing, showing her wealth. It was the exact opposite of that. And so I got teased and picked on a lot at school. That was part of the problem, which, I was used to that, always being the new kid in the beginning, being teased and picked on. But it was a lot different, too, because in the South, where I mainly lived, Georgia and Virginia and things like that, when I was a new kid, if somebody wanted to pick on me, if somebody's bullying me, it was one-on-one. And I popped a few of them. I could end the bullying after I get tired of it. There was a couple times where I popped one of these bullies in the face, and that ended it really quickly. I had lived with these country boys in North Carolina, pretty, scrappling kind of folks, kind of like hillbilly and all that stuff. And I was a country boy in Georgia, so I could handle myself. But up north in Columbus, Ohio, it was different. Nobody approached you one-on-one. It was 4 or 5 or 8 to 1. So you really couldn't do anything to defend yourself because it's not fair. There's no one-on-one. So that was pretty challenging for me. I couldn't really take control of that situation and had to tolerate being bullied. And I ran home from school many a day. Another thing that I believe contributed to my feelings of depression was that it was really rough on me having been taken from the Stewarts in McDonough, Georgia. I lived with them for a little over 2 years, maybe 3 years, which was one of the longest periods of time I've lived with anybody. And they had taken really, really good care of me. I had tonsillitis really badly a couple of times and had to go to the hospital a couple of times. I had chicken pox really, really bad. And we had lived together in the suburb of Atlanta. And then, like I said, they had bought a farm in McDonough, Georgia. And we had all these farm animals that we raised just as pets, cows and chickens and pigs. And I had a horse, and we had peacock and peahen. I had dogs and cats and stuff. Well, the only thing we were taking from the animals was the eggs from the chicken. Like I said, I had a horse. And we were really close, and they never had any children, so they really treated me like I was their son. And they were very nurturing, and I had a lot of friends there. It was a small community. I was very involved in the church. I was the youngest deacon they had. So it was a great community and a great family, and, just a really wonderful life. I was respected and just very, very happy there and taken good care of. And I really missed them, and I missed that life. Imagine being a kid and having a horse, much less dogs and cats and everything else, and I had to give them up over and over and over. And we were really close, and the fact that I never got to have closure with them, the same as with the Hams in Virginia, when I was taken away the night before Christmas Eve, never getting any closure and, just being gone. And I think that I really missed them and I missed that life. And now I'm plummeted into this new life that was really unpleasant. It was not pleasant. I did not enjoy the time that I lived with my mother and Bill. It wasn't awful. I was never abused. And like I said, during that time, Bill was decent to me. We got along. We'd go out, shoot some baskets and play tennis and things like that and all of that sort of thing and interact. During that period of time, he was decent. He was almost a pretty good stepfather, I would say. Just for that period of time, unfortunately. But, give him credit for that. But I was really depressed, and I think that was part of it. So after about 1 year, I suppose my mother and Bill decided that experiment was a failure. So between my 8th and 9th grade, during that summertime, my mother decided to go back on the road, which she did. Now, one thing to bear in mind, it was kind of Morganna 2.0. Something to keep in mind that, unfortunately, the history is fading on. Well, you had black hair Morganna and you had blonde hair Morganna. Black hair Morganna, Morganna the Wild One, one who was known to be pretty radical and etc. You can use whatever adjectives you would care to, but definitely not within the mainstream and controversial, to say the least. And then you had blonde-haired Morganna, especially after she came back after that 1 year, I think it was 1977, if I'm not mistaken. But then you had the more charming and sweet and Southern belle kissing Bandit and all that, very much more mainstream and charismatic and all that sort of thing. They're very different publicly. The thing to remember is that I am the child of both of them. During my early life, from a baby on up, I was the son of Morganna the Wild One. Then, still, the son of the publicly Morganna 2.0. Still the same person, though. So, unfortunately for me, the end of her year off was, for me, out of the frying pan and into the fire. They sent me to live with Bill's family, his mother and father, and another relative who is extremely close to him. But that's all I'm going to say at the moment on that, because there's a whole lot more to say regarding that fellow and that situation. It was really, really about to get bad for me for a few years there. It was not a pleasant situation, but it was good for Bill's family. They got money every month to watch me and things like that. So they left me off with Bill's parents and this other relative, and I knew all of them for a little over a year, I suppose, so it wasn't like a completely unusual situation to me. And, it wasn't the wonderful life that I had had in Georgia, but it was just one of those things. A couple of problems right off the bat were, this was a completely different neighborhood of Columbus. Like I said, where we first moved to was sort of an affluent area, and the junior high school that I went to was all kind of preppy kids and things like that. Where I moved to was much more working class. And I don't mean that in a derogatory way at all, but what I do mean is that there was a very different mindset and ambiance and everything else. I came from the rival junior high school into this new high school, and it was very quick that people knew that. Here I am dropped in from the very rival junior high school. And at the first junior high school there in Columbus, like I said, even though I would be bullied by groups, it wasn't like a physical bullying. I don't think that any of the kids there, if you even swung at them, they'd probably run, probably. I'm not sure. But at this junior high school, it was much different. They would bully you, a group against one, just like at the other school, but they would get physical. I mean, they would beat you up. They would jump you and punch you and things like that. So that was uncomfortable. And a large percentage of the kids there were what we called heads back in the day. I had never experienced any of that. I had been a country boy down in McDonough, Georgia, and all of that in my youth. A large percentage of the students smoked marijuana. I had never experienced that, and certainly was very anti-drug and would be quite afraid of even the concept of that. And they did not like me. I was very different, and I was a nice, easy target there. And so that part got really unpleasant very quickly. One ability that I had developed in my early life to try to adapt to all these changing living situations was to kind of be like a chameleon. I adapted pretty quickly to my environment, and if my environment was rough and tumble, then I would have to become rough and tumble pretty quickly. If it was nice and gentle and calm and peaceful and academic and all that sort of thing, well, there I was. Well, I really had to adapt quickly in this situation because it was very bad for me. I was running home from school, so to not get beat up, go the long way away and everything like that. So, and, it was just really, I was a nerdy kid. I'd been a country boy and all that stuff, and I was very studious and all that sort of thing, and unworldly. Oddly enough, my mother was Morganna, the wild one, and I was kind of shy and unworldly because my mother did not have that kind of influence over me, fortunately. But so I was kind of like an innocent type of person. Well, I had to start kind of cozying up to the enemy to try to make my life a little more pleasant. So I started getting in somewhat good graces with the bad kids. And a couple of my friends introduced me to marijuana, which, I mean, nowadays that's not a big deal at all. I mean, whole countries have legalized it. People promote it, and ex-presidents talk about having smoked it and everything like that. But, there was definitely a stigma at that time, I would say. But so I started doing that, and that is the worst thing I ever did. In my entire life, I would say that the biggest crime I ever committed was smoking marijuana in junior high school and high school. That was pretty much it. That was it for the drugs, and that was really it. I didn't like that, though. I really did not like that sort of situation and having to be that type of person, and I didn't like smoking marijuana. So about halfway through the school year, I went to see the guidance counselor on my own because I wanted help. I didn't like the life that I was living. I didn't like the person that I was forced to become. It was not me, and I wanted help to get out. So at 14 years of age in the 9th grade, I went to the guidance counselor at my junior high school and explained that I was having a lot of trouble personally because I didn't like who I was, the persona that I had developed to survive. I was not happy with it. I was a good kid, really. I mean, I smoked cigarettes and marijuana, and that was about it. I wasn't even cutting classes or anything. My grades were really bad because when you're an achiever in school, a lot of times you really get bullied because the kids who aren't doing so well, they don't want you doing well, or it makes them look worse. So I had a lot of pressure to be an underachiever, which is the opposite of me. And I was very honest and open with the counselor, and he said, I totally understand. So he scheduled an appointment for me with a child psychologist named Dr. Colley. I still remember that guy. He was awesome. He had gray hair and a gray beard and smoked a pipe. Very calm, listened very well, very wise. And I had maybe 5 or 6 sessions with him. And I really felt good. Someone was listening to me, and he was very surprised. He never encountered anyone with my history. The unregulated foster care off, here and there and here and there. And he was aware of who my mother was. And, people knew about the black-haired Morganna in those days still. And he was really quite surprised about the bizarre life that I had had. So he wants to schedule an appointment for my mother to come in. So she came into town, or she was in town at that time for briefly. And they came, my mother and Bill. And Dr. Colley had it sitting there and smoking his pipe. And he explained that what was going on with me and the problems that I was feeling were probably not my fault. He was explaining with the life that I'd had and all of that, the pressures and everything, and maybe she was the cause. Well, let me tell you something. My mother flipped out. And I mean, she flipped out. I've seen her do that 3 times, jumping up and down on the chair, throwing pillows, screaming at Dr. Colley, "How could you say it's my fault? How could you say it's my fault?" Bill sat silently and still, probably completely stunned, and I don't blame him a bit. I do not blame him one bit. Dr. Colley sat there very peacefully, just watching her, puffing on his pipe and letting her go completely ballistic, as she did. I mean, it was really something to see. And I felt like I was in some sort of weird dream. So once the rant was all done, I was taken out of there. Nothing good was said about Dr. Colley by my mother. Bill kept any opinions he had to himself, and like I said, I don't blame him. I don't blame him a bit. And so I knew then that I had no champion. That was it. I was stuck. That was it. I could not look to anyone to help me, and I was on my own. About 2 days later, Dr. Colley called me in a private phone call and told me that I needed to get out of there. He said it was very, very crucial that I get out of there, and that he knew people that could help me, and that they could help me to get out of there and start a new life and everything like that. I really didn't know what to do. I was 14 years old, no family, no one else to consult on this, no one to back me up. So I just told him, "Thank you, but I'll be fine. I'll manage." And he told me if I ever changed my mind to, get in contact with him, because it was really critical for me. And I never spoke to him again. And probably my mother felt that I was her enemy, because how on earth could I have anyone cast aspersions upon her like that? And I don't know, I can't speak for how she was thinking or feeling, but it was quite well demonstrated, her feeling at the time. And let me tell you something, things got from the frying pan into the fire for me. Things got much worse for me in the household there with Bill's family and all of that sort of thing. I didn't change. I didn't become any worse. I was resigned to the fact that I was on my own and I couldn't look for any help. And seemed like Dr. Colley was the only person who cared, but that was that. Things got really bizarre for me following that. It's a whole nother chapter. I can't even begin to get into that, but it was not pleasant. So things continued pretty much the way that they were. Turned 15, I was working, I started a restaurant, things like that. Still just smoking weed and smoking cigarettes and, getting bad grades. I think I might have started cutting classes now and then. I can't remember. Well, there was a couple of things that were very strange. One was because I was smoking marijuana, Bill's parents accused me of doing heroin. Everybody I knew was doing heroin. Everybody, this girl I was dating, and all my friends. I actually had some nerdy friends too. I actually was able to keep some nerdy friends. I was kind of like a bridge, in a way, between the heads, the rowdy kids, and the nerds to some degree, which was pretty. I felt happy about that. I was a little bit of a diplomat, but I liked hanging out with the nerdy people. But Bill's parents accused everyone I knew in junior high school and then high school of being on heroin. In my entire life, as far as I know, I have never personally known anyone that has ever used heroin at all. Okay, those aren't people that I've ever encountered, and certainly not, in the late 70s in junior high school. And high school is just bizarre. Unfortunately, I found out years later, my mother told me many, many years later, something that I did not know, and I accidentally made a big mistake. I committed my one crime in my life, and I did myself a great disservice. As it turns out, the other person, besides Bill's parents who lived in the house, was stealing from his parents. And I had a little motorcycle, and he actually stole that. I thought somebody else did. But years later, and I had no idea until my mother told me, but this guy had been finally caught stealing his father's baseball collection and money and all sorts of things like that. And they thought it was me. They were accusing me of doing it. I wasn't doing it. I was not stealing from them. And I didn't know anything about it. Nobody said anything to me about it. Those years later, when my mother told me about that situation, she explained that the way they found out about it all was that person had stolen the identity of Bill and someone else, and gone around and gotten a lot of loans and all this sort of stuff, to the tune of about a $500,000 US between Bill and the other person, and wound up going to prison for 18 months, and had to pay like $25 a week or a month or something back in restitution or so. I don't know. I was pretty shocked. Knowing that person, I'm not surprised at all. But I had no idea any of that was going on. And they were all talking, oh, Nick's stealing, something like that. And they were hating me. I mean, they treated me like I was the enemy. And I didn't really know why. Like I said, I wasn't really a bad kid. They hated me. But their hate was displaced. And only one of Bill's sisters-in-law, my mother told me that one of Bill's sisters-in-law said it could not be me. She did not believe it at all. My mother told me, and unfortunately that woman had passed away by the time my mother told me this, but she said, this one woman said, there's no way Nick is doing that. I don't believe it. And she was right. I had no idea. But here's where I screwed up with my crime. Not too long after the Dr. Colley incident and the bizarre fallout and subsequent things that happened to me after that, maybe a few months later, we were at the shopping center, me and some of my buddies, and one of my buddies, we kind of got in like a little contest about shoplifting. So my buddy went into the grocery store and came out with a can of party mix for like a drink, like some kind of like pina colada or something like that, and came out this little can that he had shoplifted. So I was challenged, and you go on, do it. So I was like, all right, okay. So I go into the grocery store, and I shoplifted this little can, like smaller than a beer can, of pina colada mix. Well, I got caught. So, I got caught. And I mean, the police were not involved. They called the house and everything like that, the store and everything like that. And But that was my one encounter with being a criminal. I didn't like it. I never got in any trouble. Like I said, I've never been in any trouble with the police or the law, which is kind of interesting, considering that my mother seems to consider being arrested a badge of honor. Of course, she's famously been arrested many times and is pretty proud of it, but didn't work for me. And even though I wasn't arrested, that was close enough. And the screwed up part about it was, I mean, this was just a can of pina colada mix. Like, what was it, pineapple and coconut or something? It wasn't even alcohol. They don't sell alcohol, at least at that time in Ohio. You had to go to a state liquor store. So this was just a grocery store. So it wasn't even we were stealing liquor. We knew that. I mean, we knew that. You could get beer and maybe wine at the liquor store, because a couple of years later, I was able to do that. A friend of mine who went to OSU gave me his ID when I was like 17, and we looked very much alike. So he gave me his ID, so I was able to get 3-2 beer at the liquor store. But that's all you could get at a like what we would consider a regular liquor store. For any real alcohol, whiskey or vodka or rum or anything, you had to go to a state liquor store. So all that trouble for me over a can of mix. And unfortunately, it was really my undoing, and I had no idea about this other stuff. It might have been the spark for that guy in the house to say, hey, wait a minute. Now, Nick looks like a thief, so anything I do, they're going to think he did it. It certainly worked out that way. I'm not sure if that is when he started stealing from the people in the house. I caught him just taking money out of my wallet one time. I woke up and he's standing outside my bedroom door with my wallet, and he dropped it on the floor in the hallway, trying to make it seem like I had dropped it, but I actually saw him going through it like sometime later, but I just thought he was stealing money out of my wallet. I didn't know about any of the other stuff. But unfortunately, I created the perfect cover for him. But that was it for me for breaking the law. I mean, I just did not like it. And I've gotten a couple of speeding tickets, of course, as probably just about everybody has in their life. But that's it for me with trouble with the police and the law. I prefer to be a law-abiding, law-upholding citizen. I find it much more to my nature. So that was pretty weird. And one funny thing, all through high school, I worked. I worked at 2 restaurants and a movie theater. I made good money. I always put half of my paycheck into the bank. Every week, I put half my paycheck into the bank. I had a nice savings. I didn't really have any expenses otherwise. I bought marijuana. It was only $30 to $40 an ounce in those days. So some days maybe I would buy an ounce or a half an ounce every day and still have money. And the person who stole the identities of 2 other people, Bill included, and who had also been doing the stealing from the family in the house, he actually had his engine on his van went out, and he begged me to borrow $550. The parents of Bill also, pressured me to do that and told me my mom knew about it and that I should do it, and he would pay me right back. He would be paying me in a couple of weeks. So I reluctantly loaned him $550. After years, I got $15 back. And he played in a band, and he would wave money around, and I'd be like, well, where's my money? Oh, this is for the bandmates, like that. And as it turned out, he was stealing stuff from the house and selling it, and then, doing identity theft and everything. And here, they were blaming me for stealing stuff from them and selling them and all this stuff. They didn't want to accuse this person because he was a family member, I guess. And I only found out about all of this years later when I saw my mom again a few years later, and she told me about it like right away, and actually gave me back the $535 that he had never paid me. And she told me it was a revelation to her. She didn't even know anything about it. And my mom actually gave me the $535 and told me about this scoundrel and about the fact that everybody thought I had been stealing. And I had no idea about it until then. Very, very strange. So, yep, I was very frugal with my money and had no reason to steal from anybody. I was probably in the best financial shape of anybody in the house, except for Bill's parents getting money from my mother. So things went on pretty much along. I went to what was known as the Rowdy High School in Columbus. I went to a private driving school. I paid for that and got my driver's license on my 16th birthday. Got perfect score in driving and written, so that was nice. My girlfriend, pretty much off and on, she was a stunningly gorgeous and very popular girl from actually the rival high school. And we were boyfriend and girlfriend for a good while and some time after high school. And we are still best friends to this day. 45 years later, we are tight as two peas in a pod, even though we live a long way away and there's a lot that's happened between our lives. So one really bizarre thing that my mother did when I first moved in with Bill's parents and etc. But I'm going to get to that a little bit later when I get into a little bit of another subject. 3 days after my 18th birthday, I embarked on the greatest achievement I could have imagined. Really, really wonderful. I had really done something excellent and outstanding and got out of the house at that time. And it is a part of my life that I just consider doesn't exist because fate destroyed it within just over a year. Just after I turned 19, just over a year later, a terrible disaster happened to me, and it destroyed everything for me. And it really threw me off. And I just don't even consider that achievement anymore because I didn't get to fully enact it. So I just don't even consider that a part of my life anymore. But let's get to what the disaster was. I was 19 years old in Texas, living the best life I could imagine. Very fit, very proud, and just really very happy. And suddenly, out of the blue, my lung collapsed. Okay? For those of you who might have some medical knowledge or what, spontaneous pneumothorax. Okay? Lung collapse out of the blue. Normally, not the end of the world entirely. I had a 50% pneumothorax. Let me tell you something. For me, it was like a stick of dynamite went off in my chest. I mean, it knocked me down and knocked me out, and I was in a fetal position for hours. It took me to be able to straighten out and stand up. And I went for a couple of days like that, not feeling too good and not knowing what was going on. So I went to the clinic and got an x-ray, and they determined that I had a 50% lung collapse on the right. Now, I was young and tall and skinny and male, so that's, I wouldn't say common, but it's not unheard of. It's fairly common for somebody in that condition. So they gave me a chest tube, which is what they would normally do. That has changed a lot since then and now. The chest tube at that time, they cut a hole in your chest over your nipple and stick a tube in about the diameter of a Sharpie marker and stick that in there up to a some sort of big glass bottle thing to draw the air out. And I had that for about 5 days or a week. Very unpleasant. They do not knock you out or give you any pain medication. At least they didn't me. They figured I was tough, I guess, and I could take it. So I had that chest tube for about that amount of time, and they took it out, and my lung had reinflated. However, that evening, I was in twice as bad a condition. My lung collapsed again for a 100% pneumothorax, and I was immediately back in the hospital. Actually, I waited till the next morning. They told me I needed to go that night, but I'm like, oh, no. I've just had the worst experience of my life. I think I'll wait till tomorrow morning. So, again, a chest tube. So they cut another hole in me and stuck another big old tube in there. And this time, they did something which I understand they don't do anymore. And I'm in favor of them not doing it anymore. The doctor poured liquid tetracycline into the tube. That is an antibiotic. And the idea in those days, what it does, it kind of acts like a sulfuric acid, okay? And it makes your lung and the pleural lining raw, and so they stick together. It makes everything all wet and raw. And then they stick and then they heal like that. And that's supposed to keep your lung from collapsing. Oh, let me tell you, I went into respiratory arrest for a moment, or a couple of minutes or something. It was really bad. And they roll you back and forth on the bed to make sure it gets in there good. Once again, wide awake. No anesthetic, no anesthesia, nothing. I don't know why. I'm like, golly, next time, when I had to have it the next time, because I had to have it again on the other side, I said, can't you, like, numb me or something? Okay, yeah, we can do that. So they need you to be awake, I guess, for some reason or another. But I did ask, I said, can't you, like, give me some Novocaine? Oh, okay. So they did, because after about 3 days with that, my other lung collapsed 80%. Oh, I mean, I was getting x-rays, so this was really getting disheartening, and it was really bad. So now I got these 2 chest tubes, one on each side, dragging around when I could move, which I spent most of my time in bed, getting pain shots every 4 hours. For some reason, they didn't give me a morphine drip or whatever, or plunger or whatever they do sometime. I would get shots every 4 hours in the arm. They normally want to give it to you in the rear end, but I said, I'm on my butt 24 hours a day in the bed. I said, my arms are fine, and I was very muscular, so they would check my shoulder every day to make sure, and I'd get the shot, and they'd switch back and forth. So for a few weeks now, and it was about 3 weeks, I guess, I was in there now. Now I've been in the hospital for, a month and a half or something, I suppose, with all of this going on. And so finally they thought, okay, and then they took that out again, and pretty soon, I mean, let's see, I think I was out a couple of days from the hospital, maybe 5 days, and I went back for a checkup. So I went for a checkup, x-ray, after about 5 days, and I've got lung collapses on both sides. Back in the hospital, super emergency. So the doctors are thinking, okay, it's something called congenital blebs, okay, something you're born with, okay, so it's a hereditary thing, nothing you can do about it, you see it coming, you didn't cause it or anything like that. It's like these little bubble things on your lungs or something like that. So reluctantly I went for a surgery, and pleurectomy, all this other stuff. They cut the top of your lung off and put all these staples, metal staples, and they take out part of the pleural lining and all this other junk. I'll spare you the details, but it was really, really rough. Had all that, so then chest tube still, because you got to drain all the air and the fluid and everything out. So I was in there for a few weeks after that. There was a problem, though. I'll spare you all the details, but it just wasn't fixing the thing. And so the doctor told me about some crazy surgery. They have to like remove my lung and do all this stuff to it and everything like that. And I was like, nope, not going to do it. And the doctor said, well, you have to. And I said, not going to do it. And he said, you'll die. And I said, well, let me go. Hey, I said, like Chief Dan George said in the movie Little Big Man, it's a good day to die. That's what I told him. I said, hey, good a day as any. I'm ready. Let's go. And I was, resigned to it. I wasn't upset or anything like that. I've been through so much. I've been through so much in my life. I was already a little bit tired of living. And this was it. I mean, my girlfriend and I had broken up. I'd helped her move to Florida, but long-distance relationship in those days, just too difficult. So we'd broken up. I didn't have anybody, nobody to turn to, nothing like that. So I just said, well, that's it. So they sent a psychiatrist to my room every night for like 3 nights, this woman. And on the 3rd night, she says, I will be seeing you again. And I thought, oh, what do you know that I don't know? And she goes, oh, no. I just mean, I can't help you. You don't need me. She said, I feel better talking to you than I'm sure that I'm helping you. She goes, you're fine without anything that I can do for you. She goes, just please make the right decisions and do the best for yourself and, and continue to be strong. And that was the last I saw of her, which was okay. Very soon thereafter, my thoracic surgeon informed me that they were transferring me to a hospital in Maryland, right outside of Washington, D.C. And I got to tell you, I wasn't looking too forward to that trip, because I was already in kind of discomfort, but it actually wasn't that bad. He told me that they had done everything that they could, and it just was not solving the problem. He said my only other option was that other huge surgery that they had told me about that I'd refused. And the doctor said, he understood. He said there was no guarantees that it would be successful. And, I was 19 years old. And in high school, we used to say, live fast, die young, leave a good-looking corpse. And I was a good-looking fella. And I had been a virgin until I was 18, believe it or not, even growing up from the time I was born in the world of strippers and all of that sort of thing. I was kind of a little bit, I don't want to say prude, but conservative in that sort of thing. So I didn't want to go the rest of my life afraid to take off my shirt because I looked like a shark attacked me. So that was a little bit of part of it. And I was just really exhausted at that point. And the surgeons, definitely, I give them a lot of credit because I had holes in me from the chest tubes. I'd had 6 chest tubes in me at that point, I think. So my chest and my sides had a bunch of holes and everything, scars. But they did major surgery on my lungs, and they went in underneath my arms, and they really did a good job. I mean, it's, I'm scarred up there pretty good. But, I mean, they're well hidden, and they did a really, really good job. So they considered the fact that, I was a young fellow and didn't want to completely disfigure me. They took that into consideration, I suppose. But, yes, I got transferred to a hospital in Maryland. And it was a very fine hospital. They said I had the very best chance of successful medical procedures there. And I actually contacted Howard and his parents when I was there. Howard had come to visit me with his family a couple of years earlier in Columbus, Ohio. And I contacted them, and they were really happy that I was there, even though the circumstances were bad. And they were very, very helpful to me during my time in the hospital. When I had arrived at that hospital, the doctors there told me that my situation was quite critical and that they didn't want to waste any time trying to see what they could do. So they said they wanted one day to evaluate me and look at all the information that they had and try to come up with a course of action. And so not the next morning, because I arrived there in the afternoon, but the following morning, bright and early, or dark and early maybe, I was in surgery for several hours and having these surgeries. And took, I was in a hospital a couple months, I guess, maybe a little bit more. I can't remember exactly, 2 to 3 months or something, recovering. And then when I did finally get out, it was about 3 months, I suppose, of recovery. They did a great job. And they told me, they understood when I got there. They said, we know you don't want to have this one particular surgery. And they said they totally understood. They said it probably wouldn't have been a very good idea to have done it. There was certainly no guarantee that it would have been successful, and maybe a good chance that I wouldn't have survived the surgery. So they totally understood. And I don't know what they did, but they went in there, and it was pretty major surgery. They did a great job too. Took into consideration, any vanity that a young fellow might have, while they were saving my life, and they sure did. And I definitely credit the doctors and the thoracic surgeons and the nurses and myself. I give those folks and myself a lot of credit for my survival through all that. And the main thoracic surgeon, when I finally left there, he said it was kind of miraculous almost. It was remarkable. That's what he said. It was quite remarkable that I was leaving the hospital, or that I had even arrived there. And he told me that he had patients that had just had one spontaneous pneumothorax, that did not handle the situation as well as I handled all of that. He said he'd never seen anyone even go through what I had, let alone handle it so well and survive. And they said something about, they thought the cause, something about a gene. I don't remember exactly. They didn't go into a lot of detail about it, and I don't remember exactly, but something about they thought I was missing a gene or something like that. But anyway, they fixed me up good. Several years later, I had to have the surgery again, but it was technology was a little bit better, and so that was it, and I've been in pretty good shape ever since. I was very fortunate because Howard and or his father and other family members would come by to visit me at the hospital every day, actually, and bring me McDonald's, which was very helpful because I was quite skinny and living on hospital food for months and months. So even with McDonald's every day, I was still not in too good a shape, but that was very helpful. And then when I came out of the hospital, Howard's parents, who are my grandparents, invited me to live with them while I recovered and things. And so I did that, and it was a couple of months of recovery time. My grandfather, Howard's father, had contacted my mother while I was in the hospital. I didn't hear anything back, but a couple of years later, I contacted my mother, and her and Bill came out to visit me. I hadn't seen them for a while, and my mother explained to me, and it totally makes sense, that she had called the hospital, but they wouldn't give any information over the phone. Okay, totally makes sense. I was not in good shape. And she had a friend who I know, a psychiatrist, who was not a good man. Ironically, there's a kind of an inside joke there, but who advised her that it would be better for me if she didn't contact me. Now, he wasn't like Dr. Colley, who was actually looking out for my interests or anything. This is just a guy who was kissing my mom's butt and that sort of thing. So he did not have a good intention, and he gave bad advice. And I told my mom that that was bad advice that he gave her, and she really understood that. I really believe, and she, I think, actually realized that it would have been better to have contacted me. So I stayed with them. Then I finally got a job as a loss prevention personnel in a big department store. Basically, a plainclothes store detective was my job. And then I did that for a little while, a few months, and a surf and skateboard shop opened up in the mall. And I got to be really good friends with the owner and the manager and the employees of that store. So they invited me to work there, which I did for a couple of years. And that was a wonderful job, very relaxing in the surf trade industry. And that was helpful for my recovery. So for a couple of years, or maybe 3, I worked at and then managed surf and skate shops, which was a lot of fun. That was really a great job. I enjoyed that very much, very relaxing. But then I decided it was time to get serious. So I got educated in chemistry and microbiology and things, and went on to spend years working as an independent scientist, a contractor, for various large companies, working in microbiology and chemistry, research and development. I was a forensic toxicologist for a while and different things, and would work at different companies for various periods of time, a few years here, a couple years there, as a contractor. I worked for one of the largest companies in the world as a chemist and microbiologist and color scientist and research and development and all for 11 years, off and on, with breaks in between, and for a total of 11 years with that company, and various other things. It was a lot of fun. Was pretty successful there. Got to use my brain, which was good. As far as physically recovering, fortunately, before my lung thing, I had been training in Taekwondo. So when I was finally recovered enough to start trying to get in some sort of shape, I found a school. Now this is way, way back before martial arts became popular at all. Within the entire Maryland and DC area, there was generously, I would say, 5 martial arts schools. Martial arts was very few and far between. Most white people did not know anything about martial arts except for, Steven Seagal movies or Chuck Norris movies or something like that, but that was it. So but I had already training. I was already working on I think I might have had a brown belt at that time. When I was able to find a sensei, and I mean at those times they were all very professional and very skilled and knowledgeable. So I was able to find a sensei who understood my condition and helped me get back up. And I got into that and continued and grew, and that really helped. And then a couple of years later, a friend of mine introduced me to Shaolin Kung Fu, which I did not know anything about except for the old TV series with David Carradine, and I fell in love. So there was a couple of Kung Fu schools in Maryland, and I started with that and went way on. And then trained in other martial arts and taught other martial arts over the years. Anyway, although this is an autobiography of sorts, I'll move on because this is not just about me, and it's not about my mother. It's about being the child of my mother, the child of Morganna. So it's autobiographical in that way. But I'll get on to some other subjects. Of course, my mother posed for Playboy magazine, a couple of spreads, Diamonds Are the Girl's Best Friend, and one with exercise equipment and things like that. After she came out of retirement, her first retirement, and I know for a fact in the 1970s that Playboy had tried to get her to pose for their magazine a couple of times, but my mother's point of view, and I don't want to speak for her, and this is hearsay, but this is what I heard in my understanding, which I'm pretty certain I remember correctly. Could be wrong, but I don't think so. That, she viewed magazines such as Playboy and things as pornography and would not do it. Oddly, having been brought up from the time I was born, to be very proud that my mother was a stripper, she liked that. And so, growing up in that world, and, she made a couple of movies that were rated X. I mean, they're not what we would consider X-rated by these days standards, but at that time they were. But she would not pose for those magazines. Now, an interesting and very sad and bad thing happened very soon after I was dropped off to live with Bill's family. I'd only been there a couple of months, and I was still a very straight-laced kid, and had not had really any of the transitions that I had to make to survive. But there was I think it was a Thanksgiving party, and the entire family, Bill's family from different states and everything, there was probably about 35 people or something there, and my mother was in town. And we're all there, and all of a sudden, my mother and Bill come in. My mother burst into the house that we were at, waving a Playboy magazine featuring Patty McGuire, who was the Playboy of the Year, lovely Patty McGuire, in Playboy magazine, certainly very tasteful, and nothing terrible about that. Waving the magazine in the air and announcing to everyone, "Look what I found in Nick's room! Look what I found in Nick's room!" And everybody was stunned and stared at my mother. I thought I was having some bizarre nightmare. What had happened was my mother and Bill had left the party and gone to Bill's parents' house where they had been living, and she went through my room and found that magazine. I had found that magazine when I lived with my mother and Bill just very recently before that, because whenever a guy would get married or something and move out, they would always throw out all of their magazines and all their pornography into the dumpsters. And, us kids knew that, so it was kind of like a treasure hunt every month. So that was the only magazine I kept, though. That was the only one that really interested me. Patty McGuire, Playboy of the Year, Playmate of the Year. Oh, I was so embarrassed. I mean, it was just unbelievable. It was like if you have a child and they wet the bed and you hang their sheets outside the window. I remember seeing that in a movie back in the 70s. And I was so incredibly embarrassed, and she made such a big deal about it. Unbelievable. She flipped out over Playboy magazine with Patty McGuire and embarrassed me. Now, let me tell you something. If there was ever a justification for matricide, I think that would probably be it. I could not believe it. I don't know what she was doing. I was crushed. I was so incredibly embarrassed for nothing. I mean, from the time I was 5, 6 years old, stamping my mother's publicity pictures and her talking about how nudity is great and da-da-da and all this other stuff, and being raised in that environment, but still being pretty conservative myself, and, for her to flip out. When we lived together in the year before, I mean, I'm not going to say the different things, but my mother definitely had some kind of unusual perspectives on different things when it came to other women, and women in magazines and women on posters, like my Farrah Fawcett poster and things like that. And some really kind of strange points of view, I would say, particularly given everything else about her. It was very strange, but that was really a crusher for me. So, I mean, if I wanted to cause my mother a problem, I might have been able to notify Playboy years ago that that's how she viewed it, and that's what she did. But it was really terrible for me. I still remember that day and that moment, and the entire family of Bills from many states, everybody witnessed that, and it was really a sad Thanksgiving for me. Okay, let's move on to the next random subject. As I said earlier, there is not, and there never has been, any advantage at all to being the child of Morganna. So for anybody who might think that I have been silent and loyal throughout my life because there was some financial benefit to me, like having, a rich mother and all of that sort of thing, I assure you, I have not and do not benefit from my mother's wealth at all, and never have. Ever since I was an adult, that has been the case. And of course, there's all these different articles and things about, from even the 1960s, Morganna makes $1,000 a week and all this stuff, and many articles about how successful financially she has been in her career. And when I was a child, she always had, Lincoln Continentals with her chauffeur bodyguards and many full-length mink coats and custom diamond and ruby rings, et cetera, to demonstrate and enjoy her wealth. And, I just lived like a regular child, except for the year that she retired the first time. And it was me and her and Bill living together for a year. And I lived kind of like a kid in a poor family. That's what that was like. But there's never been any financial advantage. 2.5 times as an adult have I ever asked my mother for anything. The first time was during the time of the LA riots over the Rodney King incident. And during that period, I had a tooth that broke. It broke off. I think I bit down on a nut or something. I have strong teeth. They're not very straight. I never got braces as a child, so they're not perfectly straight, but I do take good care of them. And I had a tooth that broke. It felt like I got hit in the head with an aluminum baseball bat. And I went to the dentist, and he said it was going to be $420 to fix the tooth, and that was outside of my budget. I didn't have that kind of money for that. And my mother and I, we were on good terms. I wrote letters to her all the time and used to send her origami. Every letter I'd write, I would send a little origami thing, and we communicated and all of that. So I called her and I told her what my problem was, and her response was, well, here's what you do. Go to the dentist, pretend you're going to pay, and after they do the work, tell them that they're going to have to bill you. That was her response. And I didn't ask for the money. I asked her to loan me the money. I have never asked her for anything since the time I was 16 for anything, but I asked her to loan me the money, and that was just not even in her radar. The next sentence out of her mouth was, I'm so worried about your pop. That's what she calls Bill, and I would call him. I'm so worried about your pop. And I said, really, what's wrong? Well, there's all that stuff going on in LA. And I'm like, yeah. And she said, well, he's going to a workout camp in LA with Arnold Schwarzenegger. It's a private workout seminar, I guess, for some time in LA. And she's worried about him going. Okay. I'm sure that was nowhere near free. Okay. A private workout seminar over a period of time headed by Arnold Schwarzenegger, okay, in like 1989, 90, something like that. Arnold Schwarzenegger was at the peak of making films. And so my mother had no sympathy for my plight to even loan me $420, but she certainly was concerned and wanted me to be concerned for Bill going to LA for the workout camp. Yeah. So that's exactly the type of response that I get from my mother. No real consideration for me, and that's always been the case. So very superficial and all that sort of thing. Any encounter with my mother has always been Jekyll and Hyde. Sometimes very nice and very sweet, very kind, and we get along great. And then sometimes, and I'll talk about one visit in particular, that it was just, and some phone calls, I mean, it's like I don't know who I'm talking to and for no good reason. But yeah, she was not even willing to loan me the money to get my tooth fixed. I wound up having to have it pulled, and I really didn't want to have that tooth pulled. That still cost me like $200 just to have the darn thing pulled. Fast forward a couple of years, maybe 3 years or something like that, and I had recently broken up with my girlfriend. That was the one that I was with for 5.5 years and helped raise her daughter from 8 to 13, who said in later years, the daughter contacted me and said what a great father I was and all that sort of thing, and how it had been a great inspiration and benefit and all of that to her. But anyway, so I had separated from that girlfriend, and we were together during the tooth incident. So we broke up, and I was living with a former boss of mine from the surf shops, and working, doing some security thing or something. I don't remember what my job was, but I wanted to get back into science, or actually wanted to get into science, I should say. I had been doing some scientific work previously, but I really wanted to get into it much more so, into chemistry and microbiology and all. So I had been taking the bus, and I'm okay with that. I don't mind that. But I really needed a car to be able to get out and work and expand my horizons. I had a job opportunity and offer at arguably the largest consumer goods company in the world as a scientist there, starting as a microbiologist. But I really needed a car to get there. So I called my mother, and I figured about $1,000. I could get a decent used car for $1,000. That's all I wanted, just an old used car that was in good shape. And this was probably 1994, I guess, or something, 93 or 94. I think 94. So I called my mom, and I explained the situation. I said, I really need to get a car. And I asked her if I could borrow $1,000 to get a car. Once again, borrow, and explain the situation. And she said, okay, well, let me talk to your pop about it. Okay, so my mother needed to have a consultation with Bill, who she had taken very good care of since the time that they met. And I had to wait about 3 or 4 days to get a response. And they agreed that, yes, they were just going to give me the $1,000. I didn't have to consider it a loan. They were going to give me the $1,000, which they did. However, it seems to me that my mother didn't feel that I was appreciative enough. I hadn't kowtowed enough after or something. I don't know, but I got a weird attitude. Okay, so as it said, 2.5 times I ever asked my mother for anything. The half time was, I married in 2007 and then moved to Asia, to my wife's country, in 2008. And I had been here for 10 years. Where I live, I work for one of the top private schools in the country, and the money that I make is it's comfortable. I mean, not super rich, but comfortable enough for this economy. From American standards, still below poverty level. So that's funny. I live comfortably here. I mean, it's pretty nice. Not like a king or anything, but certainly pay the bills and can buy things that I need, and all that sort of thing, and medicine and all, and dentistry, which is top notch, is free. Well, not free, but almost free. So, but the problem is that the money that I make, my income does not translate well to like American money. Okay, So like I can't really afford to take an airplane trip to America and back. I had stuff in storage. I expected I'd be here for about a year and then go back because I had my last precious things. I boiled down to just a few things I wanted to keep and had them in storage. And thanks to Howard, who always was like, no problem, I'll take care of it. He would pay my storage fee so that I didn't lose my things, bless his heart. And he had no trouble with it, even though he's certainly not rich and he has his own family, but he was always been very helpful. And he's helped me with vehicles and things. And any time I would ever have a need, I never had to ask him. He would ask me if I needed anything, and just always be there to help if I ever needed anything in my adulthood, in more recent years especially. But anyway, so I was wanting to go back to the US to visit. I've been here 10 years. I needed to get my stuff out of storage. So I sent an email out to my mother and just told her that I needed to come back for a bit. I hadn't been back to the US in 10 years. And I am accepting any donations. I'm open to accepting any donations, ha ha ha, or that I'm trying to get donations or something. The email response that I got back, either from my mother or Bill, I'm not sure which one actually wrote it, but was, hey, just sign up for points or whatever. What do you call that? Travel points or something like that. And maybe your next trip will be free. Okay. My email I have every single email I've ever written or they've written me back since 2008. Okay. The email that I had written to solicit donations was not demanding or even had a specific thing, or they could $100 would have helped. That would have helped out a lot, but nothing except for suggesting that I get frequent flyer miles. That's it. So that maybe my next trip would be free. I hadn't been back to the U.S. in 10 years. Okay, when is my next trip going to be? Probably another 10 years. So that was that. Nothing, no help at all, no nothing. So I communicate with my mother frequently, so she knew what was going on. It wasn't like we weren't particularly not getting along or anything like that. Just completely oblivious to helping me at all in any way. So I communicated with Howard regularly. For a couple of years or so before that, few years actually, since before I came here. But I told him about the situation, and he was like, "No problem, buddy, no problem." Not only did he voluntarily and very just like, "No problem, don't even worry about it," paid for my round trip ticket from the other side of the world and back, hotel for me to stay in. I was there for almost 2 weeks. Hotel for me to stay. I stayed with friends about half the time, but the other time I stayed in a hotel, plus some extra money to make up for the money that I was going to be losing by not working for 2 weeks. So bless his heart, he made it totally possible. I needed to throw away like 99% of the stuff I had in storage, which I had already gotten down to the 10%, the things that I had that I really wanted to keep, but I really can't bring all that stuff here, and it's just taking up space. And he had paid that bill for years. I would have lost it all, and he totally took care of me. But my mother, for no apparent reason, the help that they gave was suggesting that I sign up for frequent flyer miles so my next trip might be free. I'm not saying that my mother has never given me anything. Some years, particularly on Christmas, some Christmases, as an adult, she would send me presents in like later years, off and on. You never really knew when. But, certainly nothing regular or any like real support or anything like that, which is perfectly fine with me, really, because I'm not a person who looks for support. I work, and I've always worked, and I'm not one to take advantage of things that I even could, things that I would be entitled to, or that I could take advantage of. And I don't mean take advantage in a negative way. I mean, just take it like, Social Security for disability or something. I could have certainly applied for that and probably would have gotten it. For PTSD or something like that, I probably could have gotten that and different things. But I'm certainly entitled to, and certainly could also have applied for other benefits, but I don't. The only benefit that I've ever taken advantage of was the lung surgeries, because I could have never afforded those, and I was able to have those provided for me. But any other surgeries, and I had 2 hernia surgeries, one in 2000 and one in 2007 or 6 or 7, and I paid for them myself and any other dental. I've never taken advantage of any programs or benefits or anything like that. Not saying anything against people who legitimately do, but that's just not my way. I don't even have credit cards. I believe in trying to be self-sufficient. If I was independently wealthy, or someone gave me a lot of money or something like that, sure, I would accept it. But I don't go around looking for any type of advantage or handouts or anything like that. So it was funny because one time in about 1985, I guess I might have been working maybe 85. Things were pretty tight, and I think I'd just been working at the surf shops and just got done with that or something. They closed or something. But things were really, really tight, and I was living off of a bologna and white bread and Miracle Whip sandwiches and ramen noodles for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And I know my mother was aware of my situation. We were getting along fine then. By getting along fine, I've always been kind of like low man on the totem pole in my mother's life. It seems like kind of like a third-class citizen. I don't know why, and Howard, my father, has never been able to figure it out, but I've always been kind of like on the outside edge for some reason to her, apparently. Well, so when I say we got along, we were getting along, I mean, we were. It was kind of superficial, I feel. But, we were getting along, and she knew what my situation was. So it was my birthday, and I got a card in the mail. She sent me a birthday card, and the card had a clown on the front, a drawing of a clown, and it said, "For your birthday, inside this card, there might be a check for $1,000. That's what it said, printed on the outside of the card. I remember it like it was 5 minutes ago. So, yep, inside this card, there might be a check for $1,000. Oh, I was excited because $1,000 would have really made a big difference for me. It would have really been very helpful. And I imagine it probably wouldn't have been too much of a burden for my mother. I opened the card, and it was like a mechanical card. And the clown sticks its tongue out, and it says, "Too bad, better luck next time." That's what the card said. And nothing, no gift, no check, no nothing like that. I was like, okay, don't send me a gift, that's fine. Don't send me a card that sets me up thinking that you're going to help me when I could really use it, and then insult me. I was not particularly happy about that, but that was that. I just let it go. Now, fast forwarding back up to having been living with the Buddhist monks, I was best friends with a Buddhist monk for a couple of years, and in 2000, he invited me to live with him and the other Buddhist monks. They had a few Buddhist monks living together in a Dharma center monastery. And even though I was not a monk myself, I'm a very, very devout Buddhist and have been for years. and very learned and all of that. And so I was very involved with their activities for a long time. So he invited me to live with them. So I did. I had my own living quarters in there because I was the only person that wasn't a monk. And I had a girlfriend who was working as an assistant at a house that was a hospice for people who were about to die. My mother and Bill had come to visit me just a little over a year before in my earlier apartment that I had, a very nice apartment in downtown Baltimore. And that's where you see in the pictures on my little Google Sites page. And we had a very nice visit. And so like a year and a half later, they're coming to visit me, and I was excited about it. And my girlfriend was extremely excited to meet my mother. And my best friend, he was very looking forward to meeting my mother, because he certainly thinks very highly of me. So, and you know, he's a Buddhist monk, so he's got a pretty good attitude about things. So my mother and Bill come only for a few hours because she had to fly back to give her dog a shot. She said she didn't trust anybody else to give her dog its shot, that it had to have for diabetes or something, I'm not sure. So they come in for a few hours, which happens every now and then. So a couple of visits. Sometime they would stay over for like a day or two, but sometime it would just be for a couple of hours. One time later, a few years later, we met at the airport. We just had lunch inside the airport. But that was actually a nice visit later. But they come to visit, and from the moment my mother and Bill got out of the car, my mother was so rude to me, snarky and sarcastic and nasty and just everything. I mean, the attitude. And I was flabbergasted. I mean, literally from the moment that she got out of the car. And I mean, Bill was cool. You know, Bill's kind of quiet, and he was polite and everything like that. And he didn't say much, but you know, he tends not to say a lot. And you know, my mother's the driving force a lot of times when we're together. But you know, he was actually cool. But my mother was incredible. I mean, just incredible. Nobody could believe it. I was so upset that she even visited. I'm like, you know, I'm thinking, why are you going to come here and out of the blue just be nasty to me and my best friend, who's a Buddhist monk, and my girlfriend, who is a wonderful girl? I mean, all of my girlfriends throughout my life have been wonderful, respect-worthy, gorgeous, brilliant women. And for the most part, I'm friends with, out of like 10 total, probably 8 of us are still in contact and best friends from my high school sweetheart. So, you know, no reason for any of that. And it was terrible. And then not only that, but for like 2 weeks after, or for a few weeks after that, my mother sent me 2 letters that were just nasty and insulting. And nobody could understand what the heck was going on with that. I'm not going to say what my girlfriend and my best friend had to say about my mother or her visit, because that would be hearsay for one thing. And nothing in these 2 videos I want to be hearsay. If it is, I'll make that clear. But and also, I'll put it like this. They were not positively impressed at all, okay? And they made that very clear to me, and they actually felt very bad for me. They were just shocked. They couldn't believe it, because, you know, they know me very well and couldn't imagine anyone treating me that way, and they couldn't imagine anyone treating them that way, and neither could I, so it was really bad. And it was funny because I was having a real bad luck period of time. It was really funny for a couple of months. It was very soon before my birthday when she visited, and pretty soon before the tragic 9/11 tragedy there in New York. And I had just gotten laid off. I've been working as a contracted scientist for this giant company for a few years as a microbiologist and chemist and thermal analyst and various other things. And they had to let all of their contracted employees go. They were doing some sort of revamping or something. And so I had just gotten laid off. And then right after, like right at the time, maybe within a couple of days, before my mother came or after, my engine on my car just went up, some part, like $700 to get it repaired, and they told me that that might not even fix the problem, but that was my only choice. I had to spend $700 for a part on my car, and it fixed it for like a day, and then it went right back out. And et cetera, et cetera. It was really weird. I was having a really bad luck period of time. It was really funny. My best friend even noted that. He's like, dude, he goes, something's wrong, man. Like a lot of negative karma ripening all of a sudden. It was really weird. But I just could not believe it. It was really terrible. We speculated, and we could be wrong about this, but my mother was mad because I wanted my girlfriend to come to lunch with us. That was the only thing that we could think of. That seemed to be the case. That's what we thought, but I don't know. Because later, my next two girlfriends later, my next girlfriend later, my mother and Bill came to visit for a couple of days, and they were very nice to her. We all went out to lunch, and they treated her very nicely. So I don't know. We were just speculating, but we could not figure out any reason for that attitude. But it was not cool. Now, of course, that would have been the perfect opportunity for me if I wanted to somehow take advantage of being Morganna's son at that time in 2000, 2001. Of course, a lot of reporters, where's Morganna? What's she doing? She won't do interviews and stuff. Oh, I could have presented all of this information that I'm giving away now for free. I could have definitely made a couple of dollars, could have written a book. People had told me throughout my life, Nick, you should write a book. And, and maybe it would have been an irritant to my mother, deserved, I would say. But I didn't. I did not drop my loyalty. Like I said, I've always been absolutely loyal to my mother and very unappreciated. But one quick example, when I was a junior in high school, they had the yearbook, and the yearbook staff put it together. I think it was like a will. The senior students would write things for a will. And one of the students willed to their friend Morganna's kinky costumes. Okay, now probably no one in the school knew that her son was a student there, but I flipped out. I thought it was insulting to my mother, and I flipped out. I went to the yearbook staff, and I went to the principal and everything like that, and I was not, I really was mad about that, because I was very loyal, and no matter what, even after the Playboy magazine incident, I was still very, very loyal. And the principal actually wrote a letter to my mother apologizing for it. It was a very nice letter and everything like that. Did I get any credit for championing my mother? No. She thought it was cute and sweet that the student had thought of her, I guess, or something in the yearbook, and nothing about, hey, thank you for, defending my honor or anything like that. But anyway, so the point of that is I've always been very, very loyal. So then a couple of years later, maybe like 2.5 or something years later, 3 years later, I'm now moved. I have my own big apartment, and I turned it into a Dharma center, and had great lamas from Tibet and Nepal and India used to come and visit me and stay with me and everything like that. And I would have events there in my apartment. It was kind of interesting. I have my own Dharma center. But Bill and Mom came, and right away, she gave me, or they gave me, but she gave me $2,000. Just gave me $2,000 in a check or cash. It was so funny because I didn't need the money. I had plenty of money. I was working, making good money again, and I just actually put that money, the cash, under my mattress and didn't even touch it at all for, gosh, almost 2 years probably. I was doing just fine, so that was really funny. And, all the subsequent visits, my mother was very fine and nice, and we got along great. Always Jekyll and Hyde in my experiences with my mother. Never know which one I'm going to get, whether on the phone or in visits. But that was kind of strange and interesting. And then on my 50th birthday, I've been living over here in Asia. On my 50th birthday, she sent me $500. In all the years that I've been living in Asia, I would always send a Mother's Day card and a birthday card to my mother, and a Father's Day card and a birthday card to Bill. Okay, and you know, he doesn't ever write me. Sometimes I get an email or something now and then, briefly, about, you know, just whatever, I'm not sure, maybe a response to mine usually, or that they were going to be wintering over the winter and going to be hard to get in contact with. But, you know, any cards, and I have all the cards my mother's ever sent me still, and every single email back and forth for years and years. But she would always just send, you know, love Mom and Bill, or love Mom and Pop, like that. But I would always send him on his birthday in mid-May and Father's Day, even though, like I've said before, not much of a stepfather at all, period. But except for that 1 year that we lived together when my mother retired the first time. But, you know, for years and years, I still did that. And, you know, where I live, it's not like in America where you go into any Rite Aid or CVS or grocery store and they got thousands of greeting cards. Greeting cards aren't really big here. And there's only specialty stores, like some specialty stationery stores that even carry greeting cards. And post offices are a little bit few and far between and not easy to get to where I live. But I would still do that, and my wife would write a nice message in her language, and then I would translate that as well, even though my wife speaks English perfectly well. But it's just pretty and nice and things like that for both of them. I never had, the only card that was really, I had no problem writing was my mother's birthday card. I was happy she was born. Mother's Day cards was like cutting my own heart out. There is actually a whole lot more around the whole card thing, but we are going to just go ahead and move on. Speaking of my loyalty to my mother, about, let's see, 2013, I think it was, I received an email to my regular email from a fellow I'd never heard of, named Adam Kurland, I believe his name is, and he was wanting to do a documentary about my mother. And somehow or another he found me. He was a really excellent documentarian and investigative journalist. I don't know how he even found me, because like I said before, there was only like 2 references in the entire internet that I exist, and he found my email address, so good for him. And he said he wanted to do a documentary about my mother. I told him that I really couldn't be involved in that because I was concerned that it would not do well with my relationship with my mother, and I didn't want to violate that or harm that in any way. But he was really nice, and we actually had a lot of communication. He actually would come up with information and just ask me if it was correct or not, and that was it. And when it was all done, I just told him, I said, I don't want any recognition for being involved at all, because I really wasn't, and I didn't want to upset my mother. Now here's the thing, her and Bill were wintering where they winter, and I tried to contact her. I didn't have their phone number where they were at, but I had Bill's email. So I emailed Bill, and I kept telling him I need to talk to my mother, because I wanted to tell her about the fact that someone was trying to, had contacted me to do a documentary, and I wasn't getting any logical response. It was very concerning. And I kept telling him in the email that I need to talk to my mother. She could write me back. I don't care if she could write me back. But no. I just kept getting emails from Bill. I got worried. I actually put in an email. I said, what was my dog's name, my German Shepherd, in Louisville, Kentucky? Because only my mother would know that. And I got the right answer. So it's like, okay. And they just, so finally I wrote in there what was going on. I said, this fella, has contacted me about wanting to do a documentary. I said, I don't know who he is. I don't know anything, I can't say, but I wanted to let her know, and I gave details about it and everything. And all I got back was a response from Bill instructing me to not mention it to my mother, and if I get any emails from anybody asking about my mother, to not even open the email, just delete them. Okay, that really aggravated me. I'll be nice and PG and say it aggravated me. I was a 50-year-old man with perfect cognitive abilities, and Bill believes that he has the authority, and therefore he had the audacity to think that he can tell me how to manage my own email. But I let it go. And so I had written the whole thing out and informed them. So finally, and there's another thing. My wife and I were going through an incredible personal tragedy. Really, really bad situation for us. Something really sad and heartbreaking and terrible that had been going on for it was kind of like an extended period for a few months till the end. And Adam was he was really concerned. Every conversation, every email we had, he would ask, how things were going, things like that. Howard was very, very helpful and in contact and very helpful in tangible ways. After a couple of months or so, while this was going on, I got a 2-line platitude from Bill writing from my mother, and I even said, thanks for the platitude. Oh, they weren't happy that it was an absolute platitude. I'm not even going to say what it was. It's not even worth repeating. But so then they returned to Columbus at the end of their wintering, and I called my mom, and we had a brief conversation. She was heading out. Then I called her the next day, and she laid into me. What's wrong with you? I get home and people are telling me that some guy's been around asking everybody questions and, doing it. Why didn't you tell me? I'm like, I was mad. I just hung up on her. So I called her the next day and I said, Mom, I emailed you 50 times about it. I spelled out the whole thing. Bill, I think I told her that Bill told me not to even mention it to her. I can't even remember. I was so mad about that. I sent her the emails. I actually had forwarded the emails back to her, and I said, so don't be mad at me. Her response was, I don't get mad. Well, I was pretty mad. No apology, no nothing. All of the effort and work that I had done to try to communicate to her that this fellow was trying to do a documentary, and her pretending to be completely oblivious of it, and all of that, it was really pretty upsetting. And Adam Curlin was a very nice guy. We communicated quite frequently. He would just email me and ask me if I could confirm things that he had found, and that was it. He made the documentary. I believe it's called "Always Leave Them Wanting More." You might be able to find it still on the internet. He's made several different documentaries about things. Unfortunately, probably what you're going to see if you look for it is other people that have taken his documentary, Always Leaving Them Wanting More by Adam Curlin, chopping it up in various ways and putting their own names on it, just like the pseudo-journalists that I've been complaining about, copying and pasting things and taking credit for themselves. So that's really messed up. The original and the real one is by Adam Curlin. And he, in our communications, he really wanted me to be involved. He said we could communicate video chat. He even offered to come to me on the other side of the earth and sit down and interview me like he did the other people in the documentary. But I wouldn't do it. And he had so much compassion for the situation that my wife and I were going through, as did Howard. Every conversation, every email between Adam and I, he would ask about how things were going. And Howard did all the time. He was in great communication and helped us in whatever way he could. Not my mother or Bill. I mean, like I said, 2 lines, and that was it after a long period of time, and that was it. Nothing about, hey, is there anything we can do? Can we help you? Asking about how things were going. None of that. And I'm used to that because I have to say, and I will say, I have never seen in my life any genuine sympathy, compassion, empathy, definitely no empathy nor compassion from my mother in my life. Now, I'm sure that there are people who will say, oh, yes, she's so compassionate, kind of friends. I'm sure people that I lived with before the Hams and the Stewarts felt that too. However, not toward me or my people. That certainly would have been a golden opportunity for me to speak my truth, my existence, and things which I had wanted to do for a couple of decades. The song Cold War by Styx kind of kept me sane over years and years and years, knowing that I could always just do what I'm having to do now, put the truth out there, and I could always do that, but I never did. I kept my loyalty. So that kind of just went on, and then about a year later or so, my mother did her first interview since she retired with ESPN. I think everyone, and I mean everyone that I spoke to about that interview thought it was just really not very good quality at all and disappointing. And I certainly thought, and my wife did, and a couple of other people who know me well, thought it was really strange and creepy that Bill wasn't in it, and they showed like a picture on a shelf or something like that. It looked like he had died or something, had some like shrine to him or so. It was very weird. Well, that was just really creepy. And the interview, what an ESPN 360 or something. It was I thought, man, they blew a golden opportunity here for, decades. People, where's Morganna? What's up? And she wouldn't do any interviews, and I kept my mouth shut, and they really blew a golden opportunity there. That was a real failure, I think everyone thought. And then I know she did some other interview more recently that Bill's involved in. You can see him in there like that, but it was really strange. But so things went on for a few years there, and still communicating with my mother fairly regularly over the phone and during holidays and things, and still sending cards and all that. And she would send me and my wife cards on our birthday and Christmas and all that. Well, then she made a mistake with the my address, and one card got sent back and then another one, and she got frustrated and stopped sending cards at all, period. None of the ones that my dad sent, Howard, he sent cards all the time. A lot of times with quite a bit of money in them. Sometimes he would send gifts with Western Union. Sometimes he just put cash in the envelope and send it across the world for gifts. Never had any problem. But anyway, there was that. But things just kind of went on for a few years until early 2017. As I had said earlier, I believe it was in the other video, the Busting Myths video, that in a phone conversation, my mother had accidentally let it slip that she knew that I had been trying to put on the Wikipedia page that she has a son, Nick. I think I just put she has a son, and it kept getting taken down and all that stuff, and she knew about that. But I didn't do anything about it for a long time. Now, at that time, just about every single thing about my mother on her Wikipedia page was completely wrong. Many of the current myths I busted on the other video. That was a big reason and subject for that other video. But I mean, there was even more wrong at that time. All the baseball stuff pretty much was correct, but everything else, and I mean everything else, was incorrect. But I didn't do anything about it. I didn't really care too much. Then, moving up to Thanksgiving time in 2017, I had, after that, like I said before, I had searched the internet to see if any mention of me, and many mentioned saying she had no children, and only 2 of me in the entire internet, but I still didn't do anything about it. And then around November, well, I guess it was Thanksgiving in 2017, I called her again, another phone call, and for the first time in my entire life, my mother, now I may have given her like way more credit than due, but I sensed an essence of regret from her. Okay, she's never apologized. She's never, acknowledged anything in my life that the challenges that I went through, thanks to her, etc. Like that. Never, nothing. No, I'm sorry, no, nothing. No, she was shocked, apparently, that when she took me away after the play on the night before Christmas Eve, we had a conversation about that one time a couple of years before 2017, and she seemed very shocked that that was a problem, okay? I mean, completely oblivious. But she did, I sensed like a little, maybe a thread, a essence, a wisp of regret, and that made me feel something. But I thought, okay, and that kind of made me a little bit sad that she felt that way. So I sent a very nice email trying to make her feel better about all of that. So I sent this email to try to make her feel better, and I'm going to read to you some of it. And I wrote, hi mom, blah, blah, blah. As I've said many times, I love you, and I think you're one of the very most cool, amazing, brave, and respect-worthy folks to ever grace the planet. I'm so happy that you're my mother. Almost gagged on that. You had no roadmap at all for your life. Now they stole my line here in a minute. No one has ever blazed trails like you. I'm very impressed with her jumping over fences and during baseball games. I mean, it's wrong, it's against the law, and it's weird, but she's brave. And I told her about how amazing it is about that, jumping out on the fields and all that sort of stuff, climbing fences, running on the field, etc. So I've tried to just tell her that I was, I came out fine. I said, let's see, certainly my life was very unique and oftentimes quite challenging and difficult. However, about half of it was wonderful. I was very happy in Baltimore, Louisville, Virginia, in Georgia with the Stewarts, Georgia with Barbara King's bunch, and that school was a living nightmare. That's where I was, at the foster care home thing. Hell on earth, as was Columbus, okay, living with her and Bill and his parents. I'm just adding that in there for clarity. Charlotte with the Brooms had its ups and downs, but certainly equal wonderful times, blah, blah, blah. Okay. So mainly the hard part was always being the new kid, and then just after I'd get past the related bullying and start to make attachments and friends, I was gone to start the cycle all over again, and I missed the pets I'd had. But that means nothing. In some ways, it was uniquely educational. I turned out great. I am not negatively affected nor impacted in the least. I'm not a sociopath or anything at all. Never any trouble with the law, forming close, wonderful, healthy relationships, etc. People find me to be amazing, a true friend, and even ex-girlfriends consider me to be their best friend still, and vice versa. Okay? So I turned out great. I accomplished so much, and then I kind of went into a list of some of the things that I've done, working as a scientist and various things, and black belts in martial arts or whatever, being a forensic toxicologist and other different career things that I've done. I taught myself how to speak Japanese years ago, before the internet, and actually had a business and a store and did things with the Japanese community. That's a little side note. And I talked about, having lived with the Buddhist monks and the lamas for years and all that stuff. This is all stuff she knows, but just to kind of remind her and let her know that I've done all these things and I've been all through these things. And, I've accomplished good things. I've had a good life. I'm 60 years old, and, I don't really have regrets. I think everything I've done has been, pretty good, actually. So I'm pretty happy. So anyway, then I go on to. This is where I said that I've always been fiercely loyal to you. Never would I do anything to betray you. I'm not on Oprah or Dr. Phil or making YouTube videos. Let's see. Oh, even when it pisses me off to no end that writers of columns and blogs say that I don't exist due to them plagiarizing other idiots who don't do basic research on their subjects. They are making money and a name for themselves when I won't, which has led people, such as my boss at my last job, actually calling me a liar when I mentioned that you are my mother because of what they read. That's not cool, and it robs me of the respect that I personally deserve for those early years of which they have no idea. It sucks I exist. The only thing that gets me a bit is that, as I've always said a few times over the years, is that I wish we could have the relationship that we were not able to have when I was a kid. Family, mother and son. I've always wanted us to be close, and it hasn't happened. I've always felt like an outsider, sort of a casual acquaintance. That doesn't make me mad, just sad. I'd be really happy if we could change that. That's what I've wanted so much for so long. All right? And then I go on about, I've always been loyal and things of that nature. Yeah, so that was the email that I sent to her to try to make her feel better and, just lay my heart out there. So I send her this email to try to make her feel better and just let her know I came out fine. I'm not blaming her or dogging her out or saying any negative things or how could you. Everything positive and nice, nothing accusatory or anything. And saying, hey, I turned out fine. And it's just the hard part for me my whole life, all the way up till now, and I was about 55 when I wrote her that email. It's just that, I've always felt like an outsider, even as an adult, and that's unfortunate. I'd like to do something about that. So, a normal mother, you would think, would respond in some sort of way. Oh, honey, oh, that's wonderful. Oh, that's great. I didn't know you felt that way, or whatever. Something. Nothing. Crickets. I got no response whatsoever. So about a week goes by, and I called them and left a message. They weren't home, so I left a message on their answering machine saying, hey, did you get that email? Do you need me to resend it? So about a few hours later, a day later, I get an email from them. No, we got it. You don't need to send it again. I was pissed. I was hurt and pissed. Well, believe me. I was like, unbelievable. I have to even ask for a response to that, and then that's all we get. Yeah, you don't have to send it. I was flabbergasted. I was gobsmacked, and I was pretty pissed. So then I wrote an email. I think I wrote an email. I'd have to go back and look it up. I keep all my emails. But, saying, I can't believe that that's the response. No response is the response that I got. Here I'm trying to, be concerned about my mother's feelings and, and just, reassure her no hard feelings and that I would like for us to be closer, and I get no response. So then, about a day later, they email me back with what I wrote about my mother, about her having no roadmap in her life. They used my own words. Well, that's a wonderful, impressive roadmap of your interesting life or something like that. I could look it up. It was something that just banal, ridiculous. I was pretty hot under the collar, but I just thought, well, see, that's my mother. No feeling, no compassion, no empathy, no sympathy, no normal emotions. That's exactly. I wasn't terribly surprised. I was shocked, hurt, but not terribly surprised. So, as I've said before, once again, pearls before swine. Unbelievable. But, typical, and I wasn't shocked, so I just had to suck it up. I could just either bow out or sell her out, or just suck it up and say, well, that's my mother. I tried to let her know, again, that I would like for us to have a nice relationship. There's no reason for us not to have. My father, Howard, can never understand that. Frequently, he asks me, have you heard from your mother? I'm like, no. And he says, I don't understand what her problem is with you. He's known me very, very well. So, and, he knows that I'm not a person that you don't want to associate with. I'm a pretty respect-worthy person and someone that a parent could definitely be proud of. A parent, a wife, a child, a friend, anybody I think could be proud of their association with me. I don't want to see unhumble, but I think that that's the truth. I try very hard to be a respect-worthy person. So anyway, I just had to suck it up. So a couple months go by, and I need to go back to the U.S. for the first time in 10 years. I had stuff in storage there that I had thrown away like 90% of my stuff. Got down to the last 10% that I really wanted to keep because I was moving to the other side of the world. And I thought I would go back like after a year and visit, but I've just been really busy and really happy. So where I've been at, so I just didn't get around to going back to the U.S. And Howard was so kind. He said, don't worry about your stuff in storage. He paid my storage fee every month. And he always said, don't worry about it, don't worry about it, don't worry about it. Bless his heart, kept me from losing everything. But I was long overdue for going back. I kept putting it off next year, next month, next week. And then finally it had been 10 years. So it was time for me to go back and visit. And so like I said before, now we're coming up in like March of 2018 now. It's been a few months since that email. And like I said before, I was needed to try to scrape together some money because the economy I live in is fine if you're living here, but it does not translate to American money. I live below poverty level according to U.S. Financial brackets. I could have done it. I mean, it wasn't impossible because I do save money. I'm frugal, so I had a little savings, but it's just really hard to imagine if you're used to living in a country's economy and then sometime it doesn't match another economy like the U.S. But anyway, so I'm getting ready to try to make the trip. And like I said earlier, I sent a lighthearted email to my mother and Bill saying I'm, need to go back to the U.S. finally and visit, and I'm soliciting donations. I think that's how I put it. That's kind of like a little joking way. Just being open to if they want to help me out any. It's been nice to see them. Maybe I haven't seen them in probably 11 years, I guess, at that point. Not since my wedding. So, like I said, all I got back from them was an email saying that I should sign up for frequent flyer miles, so maybe my next trip will be free. And like I said earlier, I hadn't been to the U.S. in 10 years. I don't think I'm too concerned about my next trip. This trip was the one. And like I'd said, that was just... So then, I have a lot of communication with Howard, and I told him about that. And like I said, he was like don't even worry about it. Don't worry about it all. I got it all. He sent me the money for the plane trip, round trip, pulled me up in a hotel. I have friends to stay with, so that was one thing. I figured I could try to do the whole trip on a shoestring, stay with friends and stuff like that, but Howard put me up in a hotel like half the time, and I stayed with friends for half the time. I was there for 2 weeks, and also gave me extra money to make up for the money that I was going to be losing by not working for 2 weeks. So he really hooked me up, bless his heart. Like I said, he's not super rich and he's got his own family, but he's just a really good and caring parent. So I did make the trip, and I was kind of frustrated with that, suggestion to sign up for frequent flyer miles. That was their help. That was pretty ridiculous. So anyway, I did go. I was back in the U.S. for 2 weeks, and I just had to comb through the 10% of stuff that I'd kept and get that down to about 1%, and basically dumped most other things. I had almost 1,000 books. I had a nice library all the time in my apartment, and I gave those books to friends of mine to try to sell over Amazon. And otherwise, I would just go to the storage facility every day and comb through everything. I had to touch everything. And my buddy helped me with his pickup truck, and I would just pull out a little tiny bit of this and that I really needed to keep and load the rest up and take it to this big dump facility and throw it over this wall, and a bulldozer come by and shove it to be destroyed. And I mean, what I did keep when I moved to Asia, I mean, it was the best stuff. I mean, a lot of antiques and things like that in there, various different things that I'd collected, but I just didn't have time or an opportunity or anything to deal with them, and I can't bring them back to where I live. I have a very small apartment with my wife and 3 cats, and storage space isn't really a big thing here where I live, so I just basically had to dump most of it because I really had time to deal with it. But my whole life growing up as a child, I was having to leave all of my stuff behind over and over and over. So I've never been very attached to things. But these are things, as an adult, it was kind of nice to have my own collection of things. But then, like I said, I lived with Buddhist monks for years too, so I don't have a lot of attachment to physical material things like that. And I never really have. I've never been that type of person, not a very materialistic person or anything like that. But so then I came back, and about that time, I think it was maybe before I went on my trip or right after I came back from my trip, but that's when I went ahead and created my Google Sites page so that I could have a citation, so that on the Wikipedia page, they would accept that she has a son, okay, like the Wikipedia admin guy told me a couple of years before, if I wanted them to accept my citation or my notation that she has a son, I would need to have a citation because, like I said, nobody knew I existed because all of those pseudo-journalists out there saying I don't exist. So right about then's when I did that. So then I called my mother on Mother's Day. So like the next month, I called my mother on Mother's Day, and I guess word had gotten out that I had created this page. Well, of course it did, because all the pictures, all the photographs were suddenly all over Google, and I mentioned that earlier on, and she was furious. It was actually kind of funny in a way. She would not have won any Academy Awards for Best Actress, that's for sure. So it's Mother's Day. It's been like a month or so since I posted that Google Sites page. And so now it's Mother's Day. I call using Skype, okay? So it's going to come up within, she's seen, I don't know how it comes up on their caller ID, something, not an actual phone number. I'm not sure how it comes up, but she would have known it was me calling. And on Sunday, Mother's Day, And so she answers the phone, and it was like, and hung up on me, okay? I don't know. She blabbered something out under these fake tears. Oh my goodness. It was really, really funny. I mean, I could see her sitting around waiting for the phone to ring, and then, suddenly she was so hurt. Oh, it was, that's why I say it was kind of amusing. It was really a very poor performance. See, here's the thing, too. All she had to do was have a little conversation with me about it and say, Nick, I saw this, you posted this Google Sites page, and, I'm concerned that, I like my privacy or something like that and blah, blah, blah. And I would have taken it down. I would have totally taken it down. Nobody would have even seen it at that point. I mean, golly, how many people, every day go to Wikipedia to check on Morganna? Only been up like a few weeks or maybe a month or something like that. And I mean, people inquire about her pretty frequently and all, but nobody would have ever even seen the darn thing. And I've been happy to take it down. And it wasn't anything against her. You can look at it, like I said, just Google Morganna's, MORGANNA''S son. Go Google, first Google Sites page, and of course I'm going to have a link to it and everything in the description here. You can see for yourself. The whole point of it was to show I exist, because I had to do that so that I could make my one line on Wikipedia, and also to shame those pseudo-journalists who I'm disgusted with for decades, that just make up stuff and copy and paste stuff, that is completely wrong, and say that I don't exist, and make money on it or a name or something for themselves. Nothing against my mother, it was against them, and she could have seen that, and I would have taken it down in a heartbeat. So I emailed her right away to try to create some conversation about what was going on. And like I said, she could have asked me to take it down or just said anything about it, and I would have totally offered to take that Google Sites page down. But so we had a couple of, maybe 3 or 4 heated emails back and forth. I think Bill was writing, I'm not sure. I'm sure they were both there together, but it definitely had his hallmark involved there. But I was done with it. I was so far beyond done with my mother's shenanigans, both of them, her and Bill, for years and years and years, and putting up with all of that. I really wasn't in the mood for taking much more of it, so I didn't really care. I was like, okay, fine. So then I still didn't do anything, and I just left everything as it was. Even though I was pretty perturbed. So then I called her on her birthday, in the beginning of July. And I thought, well, maybe we can try to have a conversation. Well, she just picked up the phone and hung up on me. So that was that. So I was like, okay. And I still didn't do anything about it. So then we go on a couple of years, and then COVID hits. And it was pretty bad, of course, for everybody. So I emailed them. I hadn't had any conversation at all with them, and I hadn't done anything further with anything. And I emailed them and said, hello, I hope that you all are staying safe with the COVID, and, best wishes or something like that. And I got 2 words back, we're fine, and that was it. So I was like, okay. So nothing anymore. I didn't do anything, and I've been hoping that maybe my mother would come around and think, hey, let's open the communication. Maybe she would have an epiphany or something like that, but that's never happened. So I just think it's time to, like in the other video, bust the myths and shame the scamming pseudo reporters. And we're not getting any younger, and I don't need to die in silence, and I'm not a person who's going to wait till she's gone to make these revelations. I'm a fair person. And you know what they say, though? Every dog has his day. Woof, woof. And over these years, since 2018 to 2025, while I'm putting this out, these videos, I have seen many a website and report from these pseudo-journalists, many things, the truth about Morganna and all about Morganna and all this stuff. And it's all that junk garbage that I've been talking about. And my mother has done a couple of interviews since then. She's come out of hiding, not hiding, she wasn't hiding from anybody, but out of solitude, I guess you could say. And I've kept my mouth shut. There's a couple of things I want to say in general before kind of concluding this video. There was one wonderful day of my life because of my mother, and that was, I think it was in 1970, when I was living in North Carolina, and she had her townhouse there, and it was like during summer vacation, I think, and so she was in town, so I was staying with her a bit, and the phone rang, and I answered it, and it was a fellow asking to speak to my mother. And as it turned out, the person was Leonard Nimoy, Mr. Spock. And so my mother talked to him, and she said, "Do you want to go meet Mr. Spock?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah," because I was like 8 or 9 at that time, and I knew about Star Trek and all that sort of thing. And so we went, and he was staying at, I think it was Red Carpet Hotel or Red Roof Hotel in Charlotte, North Carolina. He was in town to do a charity benefit. And I got to hang out. We stayed in the hotel room. We all stayed in the hotel room there. But that was so cool. And just getting to sit there and talk and have a cool conversation with Leonard Nimoy. That was the highlight of my life, maybe. That was a red letter day. And another thing I want to say is, fortunately and miraculously, in my life, in my childhood and all of that, I was never physically abused. Okay, I was never physically abused, not beaten or essayed or anything like that. I've been very fortunate because, like I said, my life was a series of unregulated foster care, basically. So I was very, very fortunate in that, but I would make no claim I've been psychologically abused quite a bit, not by the people I lived with, my guardians or anything like that, but by many others. But so I just wanted to make those points very quickly. So here we are. As I said at the end of the other video, Busting Myths About Morganna, that before I would post these videos, I've actually had the YouTube channel set up for a few years, but I've been waiting to see, hopefully, maybe my mother and I could come together. But as I said at the end of the other video, that what I'm going to do is, when this video is all set to post, which is going to be pretty soon, I am actually going to send an email to my mother, and I'm just going to say, from Nick, and it's going to say something like, it would be great to have a nice conversation. I'll say, how are you? Hope you're doing well, and it would be great to have a nice conversation. And all that is required is a nice response. That's all. That's it. Just a nice response. Just a few nice words, and you would never see these videos. So if you see this video, that means it will go as I expect it will. And I'm also going to make a little tiny short video, probably titled, Please Watch First. And I'm going to explain all this. It'll be very short. And let it be known. So that's all it takes. I mean, like I said earlier, there is not, and there has never been, any benefit to being Morganna's son. I haven't, gained anything financially throughout my life. I certainly don't expect to. She doesn't do anything for me while we're both alive, so I've not had any thoughts of any inheritance for decades. even though basically I'm the only living blood relative she's had in her life for many, 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 many years. But there's no benefit to me. And so I'm giving all of this away also as a sort of a caveat to anybody out there who's thinking, oh, let me, now the truth about Morganna and all this sort of thing, and I want to take advantage. I'm giving all this away for free, okay? I'm putting out this without any benefit. So, as I said, I have a seething disdain for the people over the years who have made names for themselves and made money for themselves by copying and pasting the myths and etc. About my mother and making something. And I have a list of them, but I'm not going to present them specifically. However, if anyone takes advantage of this to their own advantage, then I will make a list and I will present it. Of course, I'm putting it out there, so I don't have any control over it. But I'm just saying, if you want my blessing, you could easily just email me at MORGANNASSONNICKZ, MORGANNASSONNICKZ at yahoo.com. And of course, I'll have links into that. And, let me know, or at least just credit me if you are going to present an article or something like that. Don't try to take credit for the information. Just, like people have done, and like I said, making these websites and copying and pasting other incorrect information and taking credit and getting paid and all that, especially when they say that I don't exist. See, that was really the tipping point for me many times. And as I said too, when I tried to let my mother know that Adam Curlin was making a video, Bill told me to, if any emails come to me about my mom, to just delete them without reading them. So once again, I totally invite you to write me, and I promise you I will read your email. Whether I respond or not, well, it depends, on the context and all of that sort of thing, but I'll definitely read it. And there is a lot more. You can't even imagine how much I haven't even presented here. There's a lot more. But I'm satisfied. As far as I'm concerned, this is mission accomplished. This is what I wanted to do. Whether any other presentations come about, I don't know. I don't have any intention of, but I don't know. It all depends on circumstances and things. Well, we shall see. But I really want to thank you for taking the time to have listened to this presentation. And like I said, I don't have any skill in editing videos or anything like that. So, and I don't have a recording area or anything. So just to try to make it easy and presentable as basically a podcast for you, I just used animated AI photo and put this to the story. So thank you very much for joining me. This has been great to get off my chest, and who knows, we'll see, but I'm satisfied, and all my mom has to do is just give me a nice response, pleasant words, and this will never be seen or heard, but I don't think that's going to happen. So that's why you're listening to this now. Thank you for joining me. Appreciate it. Bye.